Good evening, cherished companions. Tonight, we shall embark upon a deliberate and tender expedition through the venerable narratives of ancient Greek mythology and the serene sagacity of therapeutic practices. Kindly dim your illumination, nestle beneath your chosen covering, and permit the clamor of the day to gently recede into oblivion. Our journey this evening will lead us to walk in the footsteps of Asclepius, the mortal man whose destiny transformed him into the revered deity of healing. You will uncover the nascent origins of medical science within the Hellenic world, explore the profound manner in which nocturnal visions guided curative interventions, and comprehend the enduring symbolism of serpents as emblems of robust health. Each narrative will unfold with unhurried grace, akin to the slow turning of pages within an aged, time-worn tome. Now, with your lights softened and perhaps a gentle fan providing a soothing, ambient hum, let us commence. Imagine yourself positioned amidst the undulating terrain of ancient Thessaly, where the pre-dawn mists delicately embrace the olive groves, and the atmosphere is redolent with the fragrance of wild botanical essences. It is here that our chronicle truly begins, not with the tumultuous roars of thunder and flashes of lightning so characteristic of numerous Greek sagas, but rather with a more subdued essence, the poignant sorrow of affection and deprivation that would ultimately bestow upon the world its most distinguished practitioner of healing. Envision Coronis, a mortal woman whose dark tresses captured the sun's brilliance like burnished bronze. Her movements through her daily obligations possessed the inherent grace of one intimately connected to the earth. Meticulously grinding grain, tending to modest hearth fires, and meticulously weaving fabric upon a rudimentary loom. Her hands were perpetually engaged, consistently fashioning objects of practical utility. She remained oblivious to the fact that Apollo, the resplendent god of illumination and harmonic sounds, observed her from the veiled depths of the cypress trees. One might contemplate the specific allure that would draw a divine being to a mortal woman. It was not solely her physical attractiveness, although she possessed a loveliness akin to that of wild blossoms, inherently natural and unconscious of her own charm. There was an indefinable quality beyond mere aesthetics. Perhaps it was the soft melody she hummed as she labored, weaving vocalizations that even Apollo found utterly captivating. Or conceivably, it was her profound compassion towards the ailing and injured, who occasionally appeared at her threshold, seeking the succor she freely offered through poultices meticulously crafted from mountain botanicals. Apollo approached her, not in the full, blinding splendor of his divine majesty, which would surely incapacitate mortal vision, but rather in the guise of a youthful man possessing golden hair and hands bearing the indelible marks of honest toil. Their affection blossomed in the unhurried manner characteristic of those more artless epochs. Gradually, through shared discourse and leisurely perambulations amidst the hills, he assisted her in gathering therapeutic flora, and she, in turn, imparted knowledge regarding which roots assuaged discomfort and which foliage could staunch hemorrhage. For a fleeting season, their happiness was unblemished. Apollo experienced an emotion rarely encountered by him, the tranquil contentment inherent in mortal love. There were no grand exploits, no epic quests, merely serene evenings by the hearth, contemplating the future of the child they knew was soon to arrive. Coronis's abdomen grew increasingly rounded, and she would gently guide Apollo's hand to feel the nascent stirrings of their unborn infant. neither was aware that they were nurturing the future deity of curative arts. However, even gods ensnared by love cannot indefinitely forsake their inherent responsibilities. Apollo was compelled to resume his celestial chariot and meticulously guide the sun across the firmament each day. He had to attend to the supplications of mortals and inspire the musings of poets. He departed from Coronis, offering solemn vows of his return, and she, in her innocence, believed him implicitly, for she had no reason to harbor doubt. It is precisely at this juncture that the narrative veers towards its tragic denouement, and one can almost perceive its impending arrival, much like a subtle shift in the prevailing winds. Alone and burdened by her pregnancy, Coronis encountered Ischys, a mortal man hailing from an adjacent hamlet. In stark contrast to Apollo, Ischys could proffer something the deity was incapable of providing: a conventional existence, a husband who would be present each successive evening, children who would mature under the constant presence of their father. One can comprehend her ultimate choice, can one not? To love a god is to love an entity belonging to the entirety of the cosmos. To love a mortal, however, offered the singular possibility of belonging solely to one another. Thus, Coronis made the fateful decision that would ultimately demand everything from her. She consented to unite with Ischys in matrimony, perhaps believing that Apollo would comprehend that divine beings moved on from mortal affections with the same effortless fluidity with which seasons transitioned. Yet Apollo received intelligence of her decision through his sacred crow, a vigilant observer who witnessed Coronis engaged with her new paramour. The avian messenger flew with great celerity to relay its observations, anticipating commendation for its unwavering fidelity. Instead, Apollo's fury ignited with such incandescent intensity that the crow's pristine white plumage was scorched to an obsidian hue by the divine wrath. From that day forth, all corvids bore the somber coloration of Apollo's indignation, serving as a perpetual memento of how love, when betrayed, could transmute even the most innocent of emissaries. Divine affection, when subjected to treachery, burns with a fervor far exceeding mortal jealousy. Apollo's wrath was not the vociferous, destructive kind one might anticipate. Instead, it was frigid and conclusive, akin to winter's inexorable grip upon the landscape. He dispatched his sister, Artemis, the formidable goddess of the hunt, to mete out punishment to Coronis with her gleaming silver arrows. This grim decree stemmed from profound anguish, not malicious intent, though the outcome would be tragically identical. Envision the tableau on that dreadful morning. Coronis was engaged in the mundane task of hanging laundered garments upon a line strung between two venerable olive trees, her abdomen heavy with the nascent life she carried. The fabrics, simple linen tunics and woolen cloaks, swayed gently in the ambient breeze. She hummed that identical melody that had initially captivated Apollo's attention, utterly oblivious to the silent approach of impending demise. Her movements were now deliberate, instinctively protective of the life burgeoning within her. Artemis materialized like a shadow stepping into a sunbeam, her bow already drawn. The goddess of the hunt experienced no gratification in this somber duty, yet she could not contravene her brother's implacable request. There were no dramatic pronouncements, no final utterances of condemnation. The arrow soared swiftly and with unerring accuracy, and Coronis collapsed amidst the damp clothes, her hand instinctively moving to shield the child within her, even as her vital essence ebbed away. But it is precisely here that the narrative unveils its more profound verity concerning healing and profound loss. As Coronis lay succumbing to her fate, something stirred profoundly within her. Not merely the unborn infant, but an overwhelming sorrow that resonated even with the gods themselves. She did not utter imprecations against Apollo or rail against her predetermined destiny. Instead, her final contemplations were dedicated to the child who would never experience his mother's tender lullabies or feel her comforting hands assessing his brow for fever. Her ultimate words were a whispered supplication that her son might discover a greater measure of serenity than his parents had ever attained. Apollo arrived as her respirations grew shallow and intermittent, and in that precise instant, the god who commanded the very sun felt an irreparable fracture within his immortal heart. He perceived the immense cost of his jealousy, not merely Coronis's life, but his son's intrinsic opportunity to experience maternal affection. The deity who brought forth light into the world had, through his actions, engendered only profound darkness, and the immense burden of that realization would irrevocably shape all subsequent events. The god who held dominion over the sun could not resurrect the deceased, yet he possessed the power to preserve the child. With hands more steadfast and precise than any mortal surgeon's, he executed the inaugural recorded cesarean section, meticulously extracting the infant from his mother's womb precisely as her spirit departed for the netherworld. This pivotal moment became the primordial surgical intervention chronicled in Greek mythology, performed not from an accumulation of medical erudition, but from the desperate exigency of profound love. The infant, destined to become Asclepius, cried with the robust vocalization of one predestined for extraordinary accomplishments. Apollo cradled his son and discerned within the infant's countenance an echo of Coronis's gentle disposition, commingled with an undeniable divine essence. This child would mend where Apollo had wrought destruction. He would alleviate suffering where his father had inflicted it. The god immediately grasped that this was both a sacred endowment and an onerous burden. His son would dedicate an eternity to repairing the damage wrought by divine indignation. Apollo meticulously wrapped the baby in Coronis's cloak, still retaining the warmth from her body and redolent with the fragrances of the herbs she had meticulously gathered. He breathed into the tiny lungs, imbuing not merely life, but profound purpose. This child would inherently comprehend pain because he had been delivered from tragedy. He would intimately know loss because his very existence eloquently spoke of the immense sacrifice made for his survival. Every curative act he performed would serve as an homage to the mother he would never truly know. The god gazed down at his son and rendered a decision that would reverberate through countless centuries. This child would not be nurtured on Mount Olympus amidst the other deities, where he might assimilate their casual cruelty and divine apathy towards mortal suffering. Instead, Apollo would entrust him to an individual who comprehended both the inherent fragility of life and the profound capacity to safeguard it. Someone who understood that healing necessitated not merely refined skill, but wisdom meticulously accrued through extensive experience. As Apollo bore the infant away from the scene of such profound tragedy, one might discern the quiet profundity of this particular moment. There were no resonating thunderclaps or miraculous auguries. Merely a father holding his son, traversing the identical hills where that son's mother once diligently gathered healing herbs. The inexorable cycle of demise and recuperation had already commenced, though neither god nor infant yet fully apprehended its complete significance. The infant slumbered peacefully within his father's embrace, unaware that his mother's untimely demise would compel him to master the very arts that might have preserved her. He did not yet realize that her gentle hands, which once meticulously sorted herbs and bound wounds, had bequeathed their restorative touch to him through an immutable divine inheritance. But Apollo knew, and that profound knowledge weighed upon him like insurmountable shackles. Apollo paused at the periphery of an ancient forest, where venerable trees grew in a silence predating all memory. Somewhere within that verdant obscurity resided Chiron, the sagest of all centaurs, exquisitely skilled in the medical arts, and the esteemed mentor of heroes. The god understood that what his son now required was not divine omnipotence, but rather the patient wisdom that emanates from comprehending both mortal vulnerability and the meticulous artistry of healing. The forest appeared to welcome them, its branches parting as if acknowledging the sacred nature of their solemn mission. Birds ceased their melodious calls as they passed, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath in reverence. This was hallowed ground. They were entering a domain where time itself moved with a different rhythm, and wisdom accumulated like fallen leaves, rich with the organic decay of ancient knowledge, slowly composting into fresh understanding. As we conclude this initial segment of the narrative detailing Asclepius's origins, one might ponder the peculiar equation of sorrow and blessing. A mother's demise paves the way for the emergence of a prodigious healer. Affection gives rise to treachery. Treachery begets profound loss, and from this loss springs forth the very genesis of medical science. Coronis's ultimate sacrifice becomes the foundational cornerstone of every medical facility, every physician's meticulous touch, every therapeutic intervention that alleviates human suffering. Yet perhaps there is solace in the profound realization that from the most profound depths of grief, the most extraordinary benefactions can blossom. Asclepius will inherit his mother's innate compassion and his father's divine capabilities. His formidable powers tempered by the acute awareness that every existence is precious precisely because it is fleeting. This profound comprehension will transform him not merely into a physician, but into the preeminent healer, one whose practice is driven by an intrinsic wellspring of love rather than a sense of mere obligation. The arboreal expanse thickens perceptibly around Apollo as he cradles his newborn progeny, and one can almost sense the ancient, profound stillness that envelops them. These are sylvan realms where the passage of temporal units is uniquely altered, where each venerable tree has stood sentinel for myriad centuries, and every encroaching shadow harbors the spectral recollections of legendary figures who preceded them. The deity's measured strides produce no audible resonance upon the dense, verdant tapestry of fallen foliage. However, an unseen presence ahead of them is acutely aware of their impending arrival. Chiron the centaur materializes from a cluster of venerable oak trees, his appearance akin to a figure stepping forth from an ethereal dreamscape. In stark contrast to the boisterous, often inebriated centaurs of mythological lore, Chiron moves with the dignified comportment of an erudite scholar and the inherent grace of an entity who has devoted millennia to cultivating patience. His equine form is robust and earth-toned, meticulously structured for the arduous task of conveying injured creatures to safety. His human torso radiates the quiet fortitude of one who has assisted in the birth of innumerable foals and meticulously mended fractured bones with hands more delicate than any mortal surgeon's. One observes as Apollo draws near to his venerable confidant, for that is precisely what Chiron represents. One of the rare beings within creation capable of conversing with divine entities as equals. The centaur's discerning gaze immediately assimilates the unfolding tableau. The god's visage, shadowed by profound grief, the swaddled infant enfolded in a woman's mantle, the pervasive scent of tragedy that clings to them both like residual smoke. Chiron, having witnessed an abundance of divine dramas, is adept at deciphering these omens without explicit elucidation. Coronis. Chiron inquires softly, and Apollo's confirmatory nod conveys the entirety of the poignant narrative. The centaur extends hands that have delivered heroic figures and ministered to dying warriors, accepting the infant with the meticulous assurance of one who has cradled thousands of fragile existences. Chiron. He possesses her eyes, Chiron remarks, and one witnesses Apollo recoil slightly at the undeniable veracity of the observation. Even in repose, the infant's countenance bears a striking resonance of his mother's gentle mien. Thus, Asclepius comes to be reared within the secluded depths of the ancient forest, within a cavern redolent with the earthy aromas of dried botanicals and ancient sagacity. Chiron's abode bears no resemblance to the opulent marble edifices of the gods. It is meticulously carved from the living rock itself, featuring recessed alcoves, housing earthenware vessels brimming with medicinal concoctions, and shelves meticulously arrayed with ancient scrolls, chronicling centuries of profound healing knowledge. Bundles of fragrant herbs hang suspended from the ceiling like silent, aromatic supplications, and a modest fire perpetually flickers in the central hearth, poised to brew therapeutic infusions or warm, soothing poultices. The cave possesses a palpable vitality that mortal habitations rarely achieve. Water percolates through the cavern walls via meticulously engineered channels that Chiron has guided over countless centuries, establishing natural cooling mechanisms and pristine, potable water sources. Fungi flourish in carefully cultivated patches, some designated for sustenance and others for their potent medicinal properties. The centaur has meticulously transformed his dwelling into a living apothecary, where every surface is dedicated to the revered art of healing. Envision young Asclepius taking his inaugural steps upon the yielding earth just beyond Chiron's cave entrance. The centaur observes with unwavering patience as the toddler embarks on his explorations, vigilantly ensuring he does not stray towards the toxic flora that thrive in the forest's shadowy recesses. Yet, Chiron refrains from impeding the boy's inquisitive touch upon the innocuous herbs, those that offer solace rather than harm. Even at the tender age of 2, Asclepius exhibits an extraordinary tenderness towards all living organisms. One might ponder the unique experience of being nurtured by a centaur. Chiron seamlessly integrates the pragmatic wisdom of a rustic physician with the profound mythological knowledge of one who has mentored both deities and legendary heroes. However, his pedagogical approach is remarkably unpretentious. He does not engage in didactic lectures or demand rote memorization. Instead, he demonstrates through practical application and permits innate curiosity to propel the learning process. Every lesson organically emanates from the bountiful provisions of the forest. When Asclepius reaches the age of 4, Chiron escorts him to observe a deer with an injured limb limping through the sylvan expanse. The centaur does not immediately hasten to intervene. Instead, he and the boy quietly position themselves behind a fallen log, observing and absorbing the unfolding scene. "What do you perceive?" Chiron inquires, and Asclepius meticulously points out how the deer favors one leg, how its movements are noticeably slower than usual, how it frequently pauses to rest against tree trunks. "Should we offer assistance?" the boy asks, and Chiron contemplates this query with profound seriousness. Such instructional junctures necessitate meticulous handling. "We should," he finally affirms, "but with utmost caution. Fear can inflict as much harm as physical injury." He meticulously demonstrates to Asclepius how to approach slowly, speaking in soft, modulated tones that will not alarm the wounded creature. The deer does not flee, perhaps sensing the benevolent intent in their demeanor, or perhaps recognizing Chiron's familiar, reassuring presence. Chiron's hands execute their task with practiced efficacy, carefully examining the deer's leg for any fractures, discovering instead a deeply embedded thorn within its hoof. He extracts it with a bronze blade so exquisitely sharp it appears to sever pain itself, then applies a soothing herbal poultice designed to avert infection. Asclepius gently supports the deer's head, stroking its neck and murmuring comforting assurances he has assimilated from observing Chiron's interactions with other distressed patients. This established itself as the consistent paradigm of the boy's education. Each passing day brought forth novel lessons cleverly disguised as mundane encounters. A bird with a fractured wing imparted knowledge regarding the meticulous art of bone setting and the intricate biomechanics of avian flight. A rabbit afflicted with infected eyes illuminated the profound value of gentle cleansing and the precise selection of herbs for mitigating inflammation. A serpent with compromised scales unveiled the cryptic secrets of dermatological ailments and their corresponding remedies, although Asclepius was not yet privy to the immense significance serpents would assume in his future destiny. By the time Asclepius attained the age of 7, he possessed the remarkable ability to identify dozens of medicinal plants by both visual recognition and olfaction. He discerned which fungi offered therapeutic benefits and which were lethal, which roots assuaged pain, and which berries reduced febrile conditions. More profoundly, he was internalizing the deeper tenets that no written compendium could impart. Enduring patience in the face of suffering, unwavering gentleness towards fear, and the quiet, unwavering persistence that authentic healing inherently demands. Chiron meticulously instructed him that medicine transcended mere factual knowledge. It represented a profound symbiotic relationship between the healer and the patient. A poultice administered with anger will not heal as effectively as the identical poultice applied with heartfelt compassion. The centaur expounded as they attended to a wolf with an infected paw. The botanical remedies respond to our intrinsic intention, and so too do the creatures we endeavor to assist. This was not some esoteric mysticism, but rather profound, practical wisdom. Stressed patients, it was observed, recuperated at a significantly slower pace than those who maintained a state of calm equanimity. One can readily visualize them on a typical morning, diligently engaged in the herb garden that Chiron had meticulously cultivated over centuries. To the untrained eye, the plot might appear rather disheveled, with plants seemingly proliferating haphazardly, devoid of any discernible organizational structure. However, Asclepius was progressively learning to discern the underlying intricate pattern. Taller plants strategically provided shade for more delicate species. Roots that enhanced soil fertility thrived adjacent to herbs requiring nutrient-rich earth. Medicinal plants were judiciously positioned where they could safeguard vegetables from detrimental insects. Nature inherently possesses the capacity to heal herself. Chiron elucidated as they carefully transplanted seedlings, their roots still clinging to the nurturing soil. Our primary role is not to contend against her inherent wisdom, but rather to comprehend it and collaboratively work in harmony with it. He demonstrated to Asclepius how specific plants naturally coexisted in the wild, forging synergistic partnerships that mutually enhanced their vitality. Medicine, too, operates on this principle, he added. A single herb alone might offer limited assistance. However, two herbs that function in concert can engender genuine miracles. As Asclepius matured, Chiron commenced instructing him in the intricacies of anatomy. Utilizing himself as a living paradigm, the centaur's unique bipartite nature, part human, part equine, rendered him a comprehensive walking textbook of comparative physiology. He meticulously elucidated the circulatory pathways of blood through diverse physiological systems, the mechanics of muscular contraction, moving skeletal structures, and the vital rhythm of the heart sustaining life in creatures both mortal and immortal. Asclepius acquired the skill of palpating pulses, recognizing the telltale signs of fever and comprehending the intrinsic pace at which injuries naturally convalesce. The pedagogical scope extended beyond the purely physical realm. Chiron imparted to the boy knowledge concerning the intricate nexus between the psyche and the soma, how persistent anxiety could impede the healing process of wounds, and how profound serenity of mind could accelerate recuperation. Observe the comportment of animals when they are injured, the centaur sagely suggested. They seek out tranquil sanctuaries for repose. They do not resist the inherent healing process. Humanity could derive invaluable insights from this profound wisdom. Yet, perhaps the most pivotal lesson unfolded when Asclepius reached the age of 12, and Chiron himself succumbed to a mysterious affliction that rendered him profoundly debilitated and feverish. For the very first time, the boy perceived his venerable teacher as a patient, vulnerable, reliant, and in urgent need of meticulous care. This unforeseen reversal of roles instilled in him a fear more profound than any encounter with an injured animal had ever evoked. What if his burgeoning skills proved insufficient? What if he committed grave errors? What if the most sagacious being he knew proved incapable of recovery? Even amidst his own physical affliction, Chiron acutely perceived an invaluable pedagogical opportunity. From his plush, fur-lined resting place, he murmured softly, his voice raspy yet retaining a tender quality. True healing commences with the acceptance that we cannot dictate every outcome. He imparted a crucial lesson. Sometimes our efforts lead to a complete remedy. At other times, we can only offer solace, and occasionally, we must simply endure the presence of affliction until its natural course concludes. He meticulously instructed Asclepius in the therapeutic process, detailing the precise selection of botanicals, their meticulous preparation, the opportune moments for assessing alterations, and the discerning identification of both amelioration and deterioration in a patient's condition. For 3 consecutive days and nights, Asclepius ministered to his mentor with the profound dedication of a devoted offspring attending to an adored parent. He meticulously concocted herbal infusions calibrated to an exact potency, placed soothing, chilled poultices upon his teacher's skin whenever his temperature ascended, and maintained a silent vigil during protracted periods of wakefulness. The centaur's normally rhythmic respiration grew strained and difficult, and the young boy learned to decipher the nuanced indicators of a physique striving for recuperation. On the fourth morning, the intense pyrexia receded, akin to the slow emergence of light after an extended nocturnal vigil. Perspiration glistened upon the centaur's brow, yet his epidermis presented a refreshing coolness. His respiration grew more profound and consistently regular. The critical juncture had been overcome, and both teacher and student understood that a transformative experience had unmistakably transpired. Asclepius had traversed the significant boundary from mere spectator to active practitioner of medicine, evolving from a helper to an individual bearing full accountability. "You did well," Chiron stated simply, but his understated utterance conveyed the profound significance of official acknowledgement. Asclepius instinctively knew an intrinsic metamorphosis had taken place within his being. The metamorphosis unfolded with such subtle progression that he scarcely perceived its advent, akin to the imperceptible encroachment of dawn across the sylvan expanse. One particular day found him engaged as an apprentice, diligently acquiring technical skills. The subsequent day witnessed his emergence as a practitioner, rendering critical judgments capable of determining survival or demise. Upon Asclepius's ingress into adolescence, reports of his extraordinary proficiencies commenced their dissemination far beyond the confines of the woodland. Wounded huntsmen purposefully sought the centaur's secluded grotto, having been apprised by whispers and tales of a youthful physician whose ministrations bordered on the miraculous. Chiron observed with a profound sense of paternal pride as his student attended to every individual requiring aid with an identical measure of meticulous care, irrespective of their societal standing or financial means. The boy displayed no partiality whatsoever, whether the supplicant was an affluent trader or an impoverished lumberjack. One evening, as they reclined beside their flickering hearth, meticulously compounding therapeutic preparations for the ensuing diurnal period, Chiron articulated his thoughts on the impending course of events with the measured circumspection of an elder who had witnessed the transient passage of numerous pupils. "You have assimilated every principle I am capable of imparting regarding botanicals and injuries," he declared, meticulously pulverizing desiccated herbs using a mortar and pestle rendered lustrously smooth by millennia of continuous application. However, the art of restoration extends beyond mere corporeal forms. Visions, supplications, optimism, and hopelessness. These intangible elements likewise constitute integral components of the medical practice. He then recounted to Asclepius tales of venerable sanctuaries where therapeutic practices and spiritual devotion were inextricably interwoven, places where supplicants arrived not solely in pursuit of corporeal remedies, but also for the profound revitalization of their inner essence. "The inherent endowments of your paternal lineage are awakening within your being," Chiron observed, noting the remarkable alacrity with which Flora appeared to react to the youth's tactile contact, and how individuals under his ministration experienced an accelerated rate of recuperation. "Before long, you shall be compelled to ascertain the true essence of embodying both celestial power and therapeutic skill. The sagacious pronouncements of the centaur were indeed borne out as prescient. With Asclepius's progression towards mature masculinity, his restorative faculties commenced to transcend any accomplishment attainable through purely human erudition. Lesions sealed with unprecedented celerity beneath his hands. Elevated temperatures subsided decisively upon his laying palms on inflamed brows. Botanicals appeared to augment their inherent therapeutic attributes when gathered by him, as though his tactile engagement roused their most profound latent capabilities. Yet, with increased potency, came an escalating burden of accountability, and Asclepius commenced to comprehend the profound rationale behind his progenitor's decision to entrust him to this sagacious mentor. Chiron had bestowed upon him something far exceeding mere therapeutic erudition. He had furnished the ethical bedrock destined to channel celestial might towards empathy and benevolence, rather than toward hubris and self-importance. The wise centaur had unequivocally demonstrated that authentic restoration was dedicated to the perpetuation of existence itself, rather than the self-aggrandizement of the practitioner. On the momentous day, Asclepius ultimately departed the sylvan sanctuary to commence his vocation amidst the broader human realm. Chiron presented him with a ceremonial staff, meticulously fashioned from a bough of the very tree beneath which their initial encounter had transpired. The timber possessed a silken texture and conveyed a comforting warmth upon contact, having been refined by countless seasons of deliberate craftsmanship. "Remember," the centaur enjoined, "genuine therapeutic intervention necessitates both the sagacity to discern the appropriate course of action and the modest acceptance of immutable circumstances." As the youthful healer strode forth from his arboreal abode, he traversed effortlessly between disparate realms, bearing celestial endowments mitigated by terrestrial empathy, and exercising erudition rendered profoundly insightful through comprehensive comprehension. The wailing babe whom Apollo had conveyed to these woodlands had evolved into an unprecedented entity, neither entirely deific nor completely mortal, yet impeccably adapted to mediate between the two disparate spheres and minister to each. The inherent tenderness of his maternal lineage and the profound sagacity of his mentor would invariably steer him through the forthcoming tribulations. The young Asclepius strode forth from Chiron's sylvan refuge, a modest leather satchel suspended over his shoulder, containing the nascent implements of restorative practice, not supernatural talismans imbued with celestial luminescence, but rather unassuming apparatuses that eloquently testified to diligent labor and meticulous scrutiny. This narrative arc reveals that even miraculous therapeutic intervention commences with the most commonplace materials. Envision him pausing at the periphery of a diminutive hamlet as the nascent solar radiance pierced through the verdant olive groves. His initial supplicants would not gravitate towards him by virtue of any celestial renown. Rather, their approach would be predicated upon observations of his tender dexterity and his unhurried, non-judgmental comportment within their communal sphere. In the Hellenic antiquity, therapeutic practice originated not within hallowed marble edifices, but amidst bustling, dust-laden agoras and unadorned domiciles, where affliction patiently awaited the arrival of an individual possessing the capacity for empathetic audition. The modest leather satchel contained arcane knowledge that would strike contemporary observers as remarkably rudimentary. Within it lay an assortment of bronze surgical implements, each meticulously contoured for distinct applications. The most diminutive, no larger than a juvenile digit, proved ideal for extracting embedded thorns or incising minor purulent collections. A moderately sized blade, possessing an ethereal sharpness, was capable of incising epidermal tissue with precision during osteosynthesis, the setting of broken bones. The most substantial knife, possessing a weighty heft, was reserved for the gravest surgical interventions that other practitioners hesitated to undertake. However, these sharp instruments merely constituted the preliminary components of his medical kit. Enveloped within pliant fabric were slender instruments fashioned from bone, some exhibiting rectilinear form, akin to projectile shafts, for the meticulous closure of lacerations, while others possessed a curvilinear configuration, reminiscent of lunar crescents, designed for accessing challenging anatomical regions. Filaments meticulously crafted from ovine visceral tissue furnished absorbable ligatures, which the physiological system could naturally integrate as the restorative process advanced. These humble tools, therefore, possessed no inherent mystical properties beyond the dexterity of the hands that manipulated them and the discerning comprehension of their appropriate application. The inhabitants of the hamlet gradually converged, enticed by narratives disseminated by itinerant wayfarers who spoke of a remarkable individual. Behold, a youthful practitioner who acquired his expertise from the sagacious centaur Chiron, and who, moreover, bears the divine imprimatur of Apollo himself. Yet the paramount factor that truly captivated their attention was not his celestial lineage. It was rather his posture of profound solicitude as he knelt beside an ailing juvenile, meticulously assessing her arterial rhythm with digits that appeared to possess an innate understanding of their objective. One might readily visualize Asclepius meticulously arranging his therapeutic preparations within that inaugural settlement, observed by inquisitive youngsters who furtively peered from behind their mother's vestments. Earthenware vessels contained desiccated botanicals in a multitude of diverse forms, salix cortex for analgesic purposes, mellifluent nectar for prophylactic antimicrobial action, and papaver somniferum extract for inducing profound slumber during necessary surgical procedures. Every single pot was meticulously inscribed with enigmatic ideograms decipherable solely by adept practitioners, and rudimentary apothecary that encapsulated the accumulated sagacity of countless epochs. Observe his ministrations during his inaugural morning as an autonomous therapeutic practitioner. An elderly agriculturist presented himself, exhibiting a distinct preference for his left leg, his gait so severely impaired that his quotidian labors were rendered virtually insurmountable. Rather than promptly proffering a remedy, Asclepius initiated an inquiry. At what juncture did the discomfort manifest? Does the ache intensify during the matutinal or vespertine hours? Could you indicate the precise locus of your most acute affliction? The subsequent diagnostic assessment would appear remarkably analogous to that performed by any contemporary physician. Asclepius palpated the agriculturist's limb with meticulous dexterity, evaluating articular mobility and scrutinizing the man's countenance for indications of distress. He ascertained the presence of a chronic lesion that had never adequately mended, thereby engendering persistent inflammatory responses exacerbated by each day's physical exertion. The prescribed intervention lacked sensationalism. A botanical cataplasm to mitigate edema, specific calisthenics to reinforce adjacent musculature, and pragmatic counsel regarding periods of repose. However, this juncture marked the manifestation of his celestial lineage. As Asclepius meticulously compounded the botanical therapeutic, an extraordinary phenomenon transpired. The flora appeared to react to his tactile engagement with an enhanced alacrity, yielding their inherent restorative attributes with greater facility than they would for conventional human contact. The resulting concoction not only exuded the characteristic aroma of medicaments, it also conveyed an intangible aura of optimism that instilled in both the practitioner and the sufferer a profound conviction in the prospect of alleviation. Reports circulated with remarkable rapidity throughout the diminutive settlements, and by the vespertine hours, a queue of supplicants had formed outside the unadorned dwelling where Asclepius had established his therapeutic station. Each individual instance imparted a fresh insight into the pragmatic implementation of Chiron's pedagogical principles. For instance, a maternal figure presented her infant afflicted with an intractable cough. He prescribed inhalation of vapor from decocted botanicals and demonstrated methods for facilitating the child's respiratory comfort. Similarly, a youthful male, suffering from suppurating lesions sustained during agricultural labor, received meticulous debridement and dressing saturated with mellifluent nectar, nature's inherent antimicrobial agent. One might legitimately ponder the methodology by which a nascent practitioner acquired the proficiency to employ such formidable instruments without inadvertently inflicting greater detriment than benefit. The elucidation resided in the virtues of enduring perseverance and meticulous scrutiny. Asclepius initially honed his skills upon deceased fauna, thereby comprehending the physiological response of tissue to various types of incisions, the mechanisms of osteal repair, and the dynamics of sanguineous flow and its regulation. Consequently, each therapeutic methodology underwent rigorous experimentation and meticulous refinement prior to its inaugural application upon a sentient patient. The profound utility of these meticulously fashioned instruments had, until that very moment, never been tested upon a living, breathing patient. As his burgeoning medical practice expanded its reach, the very instruments Asclepius employed underwent a continuous process of refinement and innovation. He embarked upon the dedicated creation of specialized tools, each designed for a unique facet of the healing arts. Slender probes crafted from bronze, engineered to delicately investigate the depths of wounds without inflicting additional trauma. Gracefully curved forceps, adept at extracting intrusive foreign objects from lacerations, and miniature, finely serrated saws, reserved for the gravest instances where irreparably damaged bone necessitated removal to preserve a limb. Concurrently, his collection of botanical remedies flourished, becoming increasingly sophisticated as he journeyed tirelessly from one remote village to the next. Through keen observation, he cultivated an acute awareness of the subtle regional variations inherent in familiar plant species, discerning that identical botanical specimens could manifest disparate potencies, contingent upon the specific soil composition and climatic conditions of their habitat. A meticulously maintained journal served as an invaluable compendium, chronicling not merely the efficacy of particular herbs for specific maladies, but also the optimal harvesting periods for maximal potency, the most effective methods for drying and storage, and the synergistic combinations that unveiled entirely novel therapeutic possibilities. Yet, arguably, the most indispensable implement within his burgeoning collection was neither forged from gleaming bronze nor sturdy iron. It was, instead, his extraordinary capacity for profound auditory engagement. Ancient Greek medical philosophy harbored an understanding that contemporary healthcare paradigms occasionally overlook. The profound journey of healing invariably commences with an authentic and empathetic reception of the patient's narrative. Asclepius assiduously cultivated the nuanced art of interpreting not merely overt physical symptoms, but the entirety of the individual's being, comprehending the intricate interplay of fear, hope, and personal familial circumstances, and how these profound emotional and social dimensions profoundly influenced the trajectory of recovery. One tranquil autumn evening, as Asclepius meticulously arranged his array of medicinal preparations under the soft glow of lamplight, a deeper philosophical underpinning of Chiron's revered teachings began to crystallize within his consciousness. He realized with profound clarity that the physical tools themselves held less intrinsic significance than the sagacious discernment of precisely when and how to deploy them. A surgical blade, wielded by an unskilled or imprudent hand, possessed the inherent capacity to inflict grievous harm rather than to mend. Similarly, herbal remedies, misapplied or incorrectly administered, could inadvertently induce toxicity instead of offering a curative balm. The true mastery, he concluded, resided not in the mere possession of potent instruments, but in the painstaking cultivation of the wisdom requisite for their judicious and appropriate application. This profound epiphany fundamentally reshaped his entire approach to the venerable practice of healing. In a deliberate departure from any prior inclination to immediately deploy his most impressive and advanced instruments, Asclepius adopted a philosophy of commencing with the most unassuming and least invasive interventions. Frequently, what initially presented as an intricate and perplexing medical dilemma often yielded to a remarkably straightforward resolution: enhanced nutritional intake, adequate periods of restorative repose, a reduction in pervasive psychological stressors, or simply the profound solace derived from being genuinely heard and understood by a compassionate practitioner deeply invested in one's overall well-being. Surgical instruments, in his evolved methodology, represented medicine's ultimate recourse, never its initial response. Asclepius consequently cultivated a distinguished reputation for assiduously sidestepping superfluous procedures, consistently advocating for conservative treatments as the primary line of defense, and only resorting to invasive surgery when absolutely and unequivocally indispensable. This judicious approach spared innumerable patients from the compounding trauma of intrusive interventions that possessed the potential to exacerbate suffering rather than alleviate it. As the cyclical passage of seasons unfolded and his prodigious skills attained a zenith of maturity, other esteemed healers from across the land began actively seeking his counsel, eager to assimilate his innovative techniques and to examine his remarkable collection of tools. Asclepius, with characteristic magnanimity, warmly embraced these eager pupils, intuitively grasping that the formidable potency of healing knowledge was profoundly amplified through communal dissemination rather than through avaricious hoarding. He began imparting instruction to others, transcending the mere mechanics of utilizing specific instruments, and instead cultivating within them the fundamental intellectual architecture of a true healer. To observe with meticulous precision, to rigorously interrogate ingrained assumptions, and consistently to consider the holistic person in their entirety, rather than merely isolating and treating their presenting symptoms. As one metaphorically follows Asclepius on his tireless peregrinations from one hamlet to another, observing his meticulous refinement of both his implements and his methodologies, a discernible pattern emerges. This robust, practical foundation meticulously prepared him for the more ethereal and enigmatic dimensions of healing that lay poised on the horizon of his future. The interpretation of dreams and prophetic visions, the solemn performance of temple rituals, and the profound efficacy of spiritual cures all found their steadfast anchoring in this bedrock of hands-on medical acumen. The surgeon's scalpel and the fervent prayer worked in concert, each amplifying the efficacy and profound impact of the other. The unpretentious leather satchel that once contained the entirety of his worldly possessions gradually transmuted into a fully equipped, comprehensive medical workshop. Elaborate cases brimming with specialized instruments, shelves laden with an extensive pharmacopoeia of medicines, and weighty tomes filled with his meticulous observations collectively laid the groundwork for what would eventually be recognized as the nascent medical school of the ancient world. Yet, at the very core of this expansive enterprise, there remained those foundational tools. Bronze knives, their edges maintained with razor sharpness through incessant daily use. Herb jars, refilled to capacity an incalculable number of times. And delicate needles, their surfaces worn smooth by the gentle, practiced hands that had meticulously sutured thousands upon thousands of wounds. Perhaps the singularly most remarkable facet of Asclepius's philosophical approach to his healing tools resided in its unwavering, profound practicality. Despite his inherent divine lineage, he possessed the presumed capacity to invoke celestial powers, capable of instantaneously curing any affliction. Instead, he made the deliberate and conscious choice to operate within the inherent limitations of mortal medicine, incrementally enhancing its efficacy through assiduous observation and unflagging, persistent effort. This considered choice suggested a profound truth about the intrinsic nature of genuine healing. That its most potent manifestation occurs when it reverently acknowledges and integrates both the meticulous skill of human endeavor and the boundless compassion of the divine. The humble leather bag, seemingly unremarkable to the discerning gaze of modern sensibilities, nevertheless held within its confines a trove of treasures that encapsulated centuries of distilled wisdom. Among them were bronze knives, honed to such exquisite sharpness that they could precisely incise infected tissues without causing collateral damage to healthy flesh. Small, unassuming clay pots cradled finely powdered herbs, the potent essence of willow bark for the alleviation of pain, the soothing properties of poppy seeds for the inducement of sleep, and the refreshing vitality of mint leaves to quell troubled stomachs. Strips of pristine linen, meticulously laundered and re-laundered until they attained the silken softness of a caress, lay in readiness to be transformed into comforting bandages. A delicate set of bronze needles, as slender and fine as individual hairs, possessed the extraordinary capability to meticulously close wounds that would otherwise have proved intractable, destined never to heal properly. One might justifiably marvel at the astonishing efficacy of these seemingly rudimentary instruments. However, Asclepius grasped a fundamental truth that the sophisticated complexities of contemporary medicine occasionally failed to recall. True healing transpires not solely through the inert instruments themselves, but through the skilled and empathetic hands that wield them. Observe him as he attends to his very first patient, an elderly farmer whose debilitating arthritis rendered every movement an excruciating ordeal. Asclepius did not immediately reach for his prepared medicines. Instead, he initiated a line of questioning that, remarkably, no one had previously deemed worthy of asking. At what specific times does the pain intensify most acutely? He inquired with genuine concern, settling beside the man on a wooden bench whose surface had been rendered smooth by the cumulative friction of countless years of use. What actions or conditions offer amelioration? And conversely, what factors exacerbate its severity? His hands, guided by an innate sensitivity, gently explored the farmer's swollen joints with a touch so remarkably delicate that it astonished both the suffering patient and the assembled observers. This was far more than a mere diagnostic examination. It was an intimate discourse between healer and corporeal form, conducted in the unspoken dialect of meticulous and compassionate attention. From the depths of his bag, Asclepius carefully extracted a small clay pot containing a fragrant oil, meticulously infused with a blend of herbs whose preparation Chiron, his esteemed mentor, had personally imparted to him. The intricate process demanded weeks of dedicated effort. The precise collection of the appropriate botanical specimens at their peak potency, their subsequent drying under specific atmospheric conditions, and their eventual masterful combination with oil pressed from the finest olives. Yet, as he tenderly massaged the prepared unguent into the farmer's aching joints, one could discern the immediate, palpable relief etched across the old man's weathered countenance. "The gods have truly bestowed their blessings upon your hands, young one," the farmer uttered with profound gratitude. But Asclepius, with characteristic humility, gently shook his head. "The true blessing resides within the plants themselves," he rejoined softly. "I have merely endeavored to listen intently to the profound lessons they strive to impart to us." This innate humility would become his enduring hallmark, ensuring he never laid claim to divine powers for accomplishments that were, in fact, the fruits of diligent observation and patient, painstaking study. As the widespread renown of his remarkable abilities propagated throughout the region, Asclepius began to attract an increasing number of intricate and challenging medical cases. One distraught woman presented her child, whose small body burned with a fever that had persisted relentlessly for several days. The local wise women, despite their earnest endeavors, had exhausted their traditional remedies without success, and desperation had propelled the mother to seek the assistance of this enigmatic young stranger who carried the promise of healing within a deceptively simple bag. Asclepius knelt beside the child's makeshift bed, his keen eyes immediately noting the rapid, shallow breathing, the flushed, feverish skin, and the subtle tremors that afflicted the small body despite its intense heat. From his carefully curated collection of instruments, he selected not potent medicines, but rather a pristine piece of clean linen, thoroughly saturated in cool water. Sometimes he patiently elucidated to the anxious mother, "The body itself requires assistance in moderating its own temperature before it can effectively initiate the healing process." He meticulously demonstrated to her the precise method for applying the cool cloths to the child's forehead and wrists, areas where the vital blood flowed nearest to the surface of the skin. From another small pot, he measured out exact quantities of dried herbs. Elderflower, known for its diaphoretic properties to encourage beneficial sweating. Chamomile, celebrated for its calming influence upon a restless spirit. And a delicate touch of honey, added judiciously to render the otherwise bitter herbal tea palatable to young, sensitive lips. The careful, almost ritualistic preparation of this medicine served to assuage the mother's profound anxiety, almost as effectively as it began to alleviate the child's suffering. Healing is as much an outcome of hope as it is of herbs, Asclepius sagely observed, as they waited together for the fever to recede. When we empower individuals by demonstrating how they can actively participate in their own recovery, we restore to them a sense of agency and control over their vulnerability to sickness. The mother, watching her child's breathing gradually assume a slower, deeper rhythm, comprehended for the very first time that she was not utterly defenseless against the relentless advance of illness. However, not every implement within Asclepius's diverse array of tools was designed for gentle application. When a young shepherd arrived, bearing a grievous, deep laceration in his leg, savagely inflicted by the fangs of a wolf, and already displaying unmistakable signs of infection, a more decisive and dramatic intervention became unequivocally necessary. The severity of the injury demanded a level of surgical finesse that rigorously tested the entirety of Chiron's teachings concerning the intricate and often concealed architecture of the human body. From his leather satchel emerged a specialized set of bronze instruments, their polished surfaces gleaming with the intensity of captured sunlight. The knives themselves were veritable works of art, their blades honed to an unparalleled perfection, and their handles meticulously wrapped in leather to ensure an unyielding grip. Yet, Asclepius handled them with the profound reverence befitting tools that possessed the dual capacity to either mend or to inflict harm, their ultimate effect entirely contingent upon the exquisite skill and judgment of their wielder. He meticulously cleansed the wound with wine, explaining to the shepherd that certain potent spirits possessed the ability to combat the unseen, insidious enemies that were the root cause of infection. The young man clenched his teeth, enduring the acute discomfort as Asclepius painstakingly explored the damaged tissue, precisely excising dirt and torn flesh with movements as controlled and exact as those of a sculptor meticulously shaping marble. The pain you experience now is a necessary precursor to preventing far greater suffering later, the healer calmly elucidated. At times, true kindness necessitates the deliberate infliction of temporary discomfort to avert permanent and irreversible harm. Hurt to prevent permanent harm. The gleaming bronze needles were then brought into action as Asclepius meticulously closed the gaping wound with stitches so impeccably neat that they appeared more ornamental than practical. Each individual stitch was positioned with an almost mathematical exactitude, drawing the ragged edges of the torn flesh together into a flawless alignment. The young shepherd observed in profound astonishment as his once gaping injury was transformed into a clean, precise line, which promised a swift recovery rather than an agonizing infection. How do you possess such profound knowledge of precisely where to incise and where to suture? The young man inquired, prompting Asclepius to momentarily suspend his intricate work and deeply ponder the question. Each and every human body narrates its own unique chronicle, he ultimately responded. The vital blood illuminates the path it desires to traverse, and the resilient muscles reveal their preferred orientation. My role is merely to attentively heed their silent declarations and assist them in recollecting their inherent state of wholeness. As the ensuing weeks gradually unfolded, Asclepius's burgeoning reputation spread far and wide, celebrated not only for his extraordinary healing capabilities, but also for his benevolent willingness to impart his profound wisdom to others. He diligently instructed the local women in the intricate preparation of diverse herbal remedies designed to alleviate prevalent common ailments. Furthermore, he meticulously educated the young men on the proper techniques for setting fractured bones and assiduously cleansing wounds to avert infection. His modest leather bag, brimming with essential tools, effectively evolved into a peripatetic school of medical instruction, traveling wherever his healing presence was required. However, it was a fundamental tenet of Asclepius's teachings that instruments, no matter how sophisticated, derive their true efficacy solely from the sagacity that directs their application. He consistently reminded his eager students of the profound underlying principles that underpinned the various medical techniques. These tangible instruments merely serve as extensions of our physical hands, he elucidated during an impromptu lesson conducted beneath the dappled shade trees of a bustling market square. Yet they inherently lack the capacity to extend the depths of our hearts. Compassion, I assure you, is the preeminent tool that renders all others truly efficacious. Why do you so freely disseminate your invaluable secrets? Questioned a seasoned physician from the nearest urban center, his tone betraying a hint of professional jealousy concerning the young healer's rapidly ascending renown. Do you not harbor any apprehension regarding potential competition? Asclepius appeared genuinely perplexed by the inquiry. The magnitude of human suffering is far too immense for any singular healer to adequately address, he stated with unadorned simplicity. The greater the number of hands proficient in the art of healing, the lesser the quantum of pain that afflicts the world. This profound philosophy inaugurated a transformative shift within the very fabric of medicine itself. Rather than jealously guarding knowledge as a coveted treasure, Asclepius pioneered the creation of the inaugural network of healers who openly exchanged innovative techniques and groundbreaking discoveries. He meticulously demonstrated to them how to fashion their own specialized instruments, where to procure the finest raw materials, and which particular techniques proved most effective for specific ailments. His humble leather bag, once a personal possession, became a widely emulated template, its design and contents replicated throughout the entire Greek world. As our exploration into the revolutionary medical practices championed by Asclepius approaches its conclusion, one might readily discern the truly groundbreaking nature of his methodological approach. In an era where the act of healing was frequently perceived as either an act of arcane magic or direct divine intervention, he steadfastly advocated for a comprehensive understanding of the actual physiological workings of the human body. He established the first systematic framework for medical practice, laid the groundwork for the earliest schools of medical thought, and cultivated the initial interconnected network of professionally trained healers. He vividly underscored this fundamental truth when a severely diseased beggar, whose affliction was so advanced and agonizing that all other healers had refused him succor, arrived seeking his aid. The man's condition was deeply entrenched and excruciating, his body bearing the indelible marks of prolonged neglect. Other physicians would undoubtedly have summarily dismissed him as utterly incurable. Yet Asclepius, without hesitation, reached for his bag with the identical meticulous attention he consistently afforded to his most affluent patients. The instruments he employed were precisely the same. The familiar bronze knives, the very same herbal preparations, the identical linen bandages. However, the profound empathy and unwavering care with which he applied them indelibly transformed both the treatment administered and the patient receiving it. Even in circumstances where a complete cure remains beyond our grasp, he instructed his attentive students, we are invariably capable of providing solace and comfort. On occasion, that very comfort becomes the bedrock upon which a seemingly impossible healing ultimately manifests. Perhaps most significantly, he perpetually remembered that the most exquisitely sophisticated instrument contained within his modest bag was, in fact, kindness itself. Every gleaming bronze knife was guided by an innate compassion. Every potent herbal remedy was meticulously prepared with an abundance of love, and every soft bandage was applied with an unwavering sense of hope. His practical tools were undeniably simple, yet the profound heart that directed their application possessed an infinite capacity for profound care. And so we bid farewell to Asclepius, diligently laboring within that unassuming village, his venerable leather bag lying open beside him as he attends to an incessant procession of patients. The indispensable tools of healing radiate outward from his gentle, skilled hands, much like the ever-widening ripples in a placid body of water, carrying much-needed relief to distant corners of the world where suffering once persisted without solace or answer. However, the art of healing in the ancient world encompassed far more than mere physical remedies. As Asclepius's distinguished reputation continued to burgeon, individuals began to seek his counsel for ailments that botanical concoctions alone could not address. It was during these instances that his divine lineage manifested itself with striking clarity, not through ostentatious miracles, but rather through his profound innate ability to comprehend the enigmatic nexus between dreams and healing, a connection that would subsequently form the very bedrock of what came to be known as temple medicine. Envision yourself accompanying Asclepius as he pays a visit to a woman who has endured months of unrelenting, persistent headaches. Despite numerous attempts, no amount of willow bark tea or soothing compresses has succeeded in bringing her any measure of relief. One can readily discern the profound desperation etched upon her countenance as she recounts her nights spent restlessly pacing her humble dwelling, utterly incapable of finding any repose. Her devoted husband observes her helplessly, acutely aware that his wife's chronic pain has now become the gravitational center around which their entire family's existence sorrowfully revolves. "Kindly recount your dreams to me," Asclepius softly requests, settling himself beside her bed with the characteristic patient attention that has become his distinguishing hallmark. The unexpected request momentarily startles her. What conceivable connection could dreams possibly have to the relentless pounding within her temples? Yet, something in his inherently gentle demeanor encourages an unreserved honesty, and she gradually begins to articulate the peculiar visions that visit her during the fleeting moments when sheer exhaustion finally claims her. She vividly describes dreaming of a dark, cavernous space brimming with surging, rushing water, where she stands, desperately calling out for her lost child. The mournful sound reverberates endlessly, echoing off the unyielding stone walls that appear to relentlessly close in with each passing moment. She invariably awakens from this recurring dream with her headache profoundly intensified, her heart racing with an inexplicable grief she cannot explicitly name. "But I possess no lost child," she clarifies to Asclepius. "My children are all grown and thriving. Why does this particular dream incessantly torment me?" Asclepius listens with the same meticulous attention he once devoted to Chiron's profound lessons on discerning the subtle, intricate signs of the forest. He intuitively understands that dreams frequently communicate through a rich tapestry of symbols, unveiling profound truths that the conscious mind often struggles to confront directly. Through a series of gentle, probing questions, he eventually ascertains information about a miscarriage she had tragically suffered many years prior. A profound loss she had buried so deeply within her psyche that her waking mind rarely acknowledged its existence. Your body retains the memory of what your heart endeavors to forget, he gently explains. At times, pain traverses beneath the surface, much like water flowing through subterranean caves, ultimately emerging in locations we least anticipate. He prescribes not only specific herbs to alleviate her persistent headaches, but also a meaningful ritual of mourning for the child who tragically never drew breath. Grant your suppressed grief a designated outlet, he thoughtfully suggests, and it may cease to manifest as pain in other parts of your being. This profound insight gradually evolves into a consistent pattern as Asclepius progressively refines his understanding of healing through the interpretation of dreams. He becomes adept at deciphering the complex, symbolic language of the sleeping mind, interpreting visions that reveal previously concealed sources of illness. A man who recurrently dreams of drowning subsequently discovers his profound underlying fear of losing control. A woman who repeatedly dreams of being relentlessly chased ultimately comprehends her deep-seated anxiety concerning an unhappy and unfulfilling marriage. Quite frequently, physical symptoms miraculously dissipate once long-standing emotional wounds finally receive the much-needed attention and compassionate care they require. One might naturally ponder how Asclepius developed this remarkably unusual approach to medical practice. The answer lies partly in his inherent divine heritage, as gods often communicate through the enigmatic realms of dreams and visions, but predominantly in his unwavering willingness to attentively listen to aspects of human experience that other healers routinely disregarded. He keenly observed that patients frequently alluded to their dreams, and he began to accord these nocturnal narratives the same serious consideration he applied to the rigorous study of their physical symptoms. Word of the young healer who achieved cures through the insightful interpretation of dreams rapidly proliferated, and pilgrims from distant lands began undertaking special journeys specifically to seek his extraordinary assistance. However, Asclepius did not merely analyze their visions. He assiduously taught them how to actively invite healing dreams themselves. Sleep serves as a profound doorway, he explains to an assembly of patients gathered within a tranquil grove of sacred trees. When we approach it with proper reverence and preparation, we can effectively pass through to realms where true healing patiently awaits. He meticulously instructs them on how to prepare for therapeutic sleep, which includes bathing in cool, pristine spring water to purify both the physical body and the ethereal spirit, fasting to quiet the incessant chatter of the conscious mind, and burning specific aromatic herbs whose fragrant smoke is believed to carry fervent prayers directly to the benevolent gods of healing. This elaborate preparatory process becomes as profoundly significant as the dreams themselves, effectively creating a sacred space that invites the divine into the realm of ordinary, everyday life. Picture the serene scene as Asclepius meticulously prepares a sleeping chamber for a prosperous merchant whose chronic stomach ailments have stubbornly resisted all conventional medical treatments. The room itself is simple yet thoughtfully arranged. Clean, crisp linen adorning a comfortable bed, walls adorned with tranquil paintings depicting peaceful, pastoral landscapes, and a small, reverently placed altar holding sincere offerings to the healing deities. Soft, melodic music gently drifts from nearby chambers, where other patients peacefully rest in their own healing sleep. Whatever visions you experience tonight may illuminate the path toward wellness. Asclepius gently informs the merchant as the evening shadows gradually lengthen. Do not attempt to force the visions. Instead, allow them to manifest naturally, much like birds returning to their familiar roost. Whatever you perceive, remember it with utmost care. Even seemingly confusing dreams frequently harbor invaluable seeds of profound understanding. He thoughtfully places a small scroll and a delicate writing reed beside the bed, understanding that the ephemeral nature of dreams means they quickly fade unless meticulously captured in written words. The merchant subsequently dreams of a lavish banquet where he sits entirely alone at a table laden with an abundance of rich, delectable foods. Yet he is utterly unable to eat because his mouth is inexplicably sewn shut with intricate golden thread. Each time he attempts to sever the binding thread, it magically grows thicker and more restrictive. When he awakens and vividly describes this peculiar vision to Asclepius, the healer nods with an immediate recognition. Your stomach troubles you because your words are ensnared. Asclepius interprets with profound insight. What truths have you been unable to articulate? Through a careful and empathetic conversation, they ultimately uncover the merchant's long-standing, deeply buried resentment toward a business partner who had unscrupulously cheated him many years ago. The unexpressed, festering anger had, quite literally, been slowly consuming his digestive system, thereby generating physical symptoms from an emotional poison. Asclepius prescribes not merely soothing herbs for the ailing stomach, but also a ritualistic confrontation where the merchant can finally speak his truth and articulate his long-suppressed feelings. Sometimes, the process of healing demands as much courage as it does medicine, the insightful healer observes. Your dream vividly revealed the golden thread, valuable certainly but profoundly binding. While truth may exact a precious cost, silence, I assure you, costs far, far more. Asclepius, observing his burgeoning reputation for miraculous dream healing, began to discern recurring motifs within the nocturnal visions experienced by his patients. He noted certain symbols manifesting with remarkable regularity. The serpent, often signifying profound transformation and renewal. The ubiquitous presence of water, emblematic of emotional purification and spiritual cleansing. The enigmatic cave, hinting at concealed wisdom and introspective journeys. And the steadfast tree, representing enduring growth and gradual recuperation over the expanse of time. Diligently, he commenced the meticulous documentation of these potent dream symbols and their associated meanings, thereby pioneering the very first systematic methodology for therapeutic dream interpretation. Yet, it was the most profound and impactful dreams, those seemingly originating directly from the celestial deities themselves, that truly captivated his contemplative mind. Patients frequently recounted vivid apparitions of Asclepius appearing to them during their slumber, dispensing precise remedies or enacting astonishing cures that seamlessly manifested in their waking lives. These divinely inspired dreams profoundly perplexed and humbled the esteemed healer, who struggled to comprehend how his likeness could materialize before individuals miles away, while he himself lay undisturbed in his own bed. Perhaps the very act of healing engenders its own pervasive presence. He pondered aloud to a fellow practitioner who had journeyed to study his innovative methodologies. When our dedication to alleviating suffering becomes absolute, we transcend the confines of our physical forms. Our unwavering intention to heal assumes an autonomous existence, reaching out to those who are most in need of our restorative touch. This inherently mystical dimension of his vocation simultaneously fascinated and disquieted him, prompting an enduring philosophical inquiry. Where precisely did the boundaries of human skill dissolve and the realm of divine intervention unequivocally commence? The elusive answer materialized within his own dreamscape, which had become increasingly lucid and profound as his extraordinary healing capabilities burgeoned. He envisioned himself standing amidst an immense, silent library, its towering shelves laden with ancient scrolls containing the accumulated medical wisdom of every culture and every epoch known to humanity. A distinguished figure, whom he instinctively recognized as his revered father, Apollo, then appeared, though not in the resplendent glory of an Olympian god. Instead, Apollo manifested as an aged physician, his hands bearing the unmistakable calluses of a lifetime dedicated to selfless service to others. "You fret over the genesis of your remarkable gifts," the dream Apollo gently imparted, his voice resonating with ancient wisdom. "But healing itself is the ultimate source. Each instance you alleviate pain, you draw from the very same boundless wellspring that nourishes all compassion throughout existence. The gods do not possess an exclusive claim on healing. Rather, we serve it, just as diligently as you do." This revelatory dream bestowed upon Asclepius the profound inner peace he had so earnestly sought, finally understanding that his extraordinary abilities flowed from a wellspring far grander than either mere divine power or mortal expertise. Empowered by this newfound profound understanding, Asclepius embarked upon the crucial mission of instructing other healers in the intricate art of engaging with their patients' dreams. He meticulously demonstrated how to cultivate the optimal environmental conditions conducive to therapeutic sleep, how to discern and interpret the often cryptic common dream symbols, and vitally, how to assist patients in forging meaningful connections between their nocturnal visions and their physical or spiritual ailments. Dreams are, in essence, intimate letters penned by the body to the soul. He elucidated to his eager students, "Our paramount duty is to empower individuals to decipher their own profound messages." This transformative practice gradually disseminated throughout the Hellenic world, eventually attaining formal institutionalization within the revered temples that would, in time, proudly bear Asclepius's venerable name. Pilgrims would undertake arduous journeys spanning hundreds of miles to repose within these sacred chambers, where it was fervently believed that healing dreams would visit those who approached with appropriate spiritual preparation and a genuine, heartfelt need. However, the fundamental bedrock for all these widespread practices was firmly laid during these nascent years, when a young, insightful healer first truly learned to attune himself to the profound and often unspoken language of sleep. Asclepius intuitively grasped that the sleeping mind frequently apprehends solutions that remain elusive to conscious waking awareness, that rest, in its purest form, can itself be a potent balm, and that genuine healing occasionally necessitates venturing into the depths of darkness to ultimately unearth the light of recovery. And should the notion of healing dreams strike one as overly mystical for our contemporary era, it is pertinent to recall that modern scientific inquiry has now substantiated what Asclepius sagaciously intuited millennia ago. Sleep is the indispensable period during which the physical body undergoes vital repair and regeneration, when the intricate mind processes and assuages emotional wounds, and when the enigmatic yet crucial nexus between physical and spiritual well-being most vividly and unequivocally reveals its profound significance. As news of Asclepius's extraordinary healing prowess resonated across the breadth of Greece, a truly remarkable phenomenon began to unfold. Communities, inspired by his methods and successes, commenced the construction of dedicated sanctuaries specifically devoted to the healing arts. These were not merely places of medical intervention, but holistic environments where the practical, empirical medicine gleaned from Chiron's tutelage harmoniously merged with the profound spiritual dimensions inherent in the process of recovery. Crucially, these edifices were conceived not as grandiose monuments to human ego or ostentatious displays of wealth, but rather as meticulously designed spaces where the heavy burden of suffering could genuinely transmute into the uplifting promise of hope. One might easily envision standing on a sun-drenched hillside, overlooking the bustling construction of the very first Asclepion, as these innovative healing temples would come to be universally known. The selection of its location was far from arbitrary. It was strategically positioned beside a pristine natural spring whose life-giving waters had been revered as sacred for countless generations. The site was further embraced by verdant groves of ancient trees, providing both welcome shade from the Mediterranean sun and a rich bounty of potent medicinal herbs. The visionary architects of the era possessed an innate understanding that profound healing flourishes most effectively in environments where nature herself seems to gently murmur promises of renewal and restoration. One could observe the painstaking precision and thoughtful deliberation that infused every single facet of the sanctuary's design. The principal temple ascended in graceful, gentle terraces, meticulously following the hillside's natural contours, thereby creating spaces that felt intrinsically organic and seamlessly integrated with their surroundings, rather than jarringly imposed. Expansive porticos offered welcome refuge from both the scorching sun and sudden downpours, while simultaneously ensuring the free and invigorating circulation of fresh air. Gardens were cultivated not solely for their aesthetic allure, but more importantly, for their intrinsic therapeutic properties. Fragrant lavender was planted to assuage anxiety, refreshing mint to soothe digestive discomforts, and vibrant roses, whose intoxicating fragrance was believed to profoundly uplift the weary spirit. The sleeping chambers, or abata, received particular attention. Conceived according to the enlightened principles that Asclepius had painstakingly uncovered through years of dedicated work with healing dreams. Each room was oriented to face the east, designed to capture the very first gentle rays of dawn, thus facilitating patients' natural awakening rather than abruptly jolting them from their restorative slumber. The interior walls were meticulously adorned with calming frescoes depicting serene and peaceful landscapes, placid meadows where sheep grazed quietly, tranquil seashores where gentle waves rhythmically lapped against soft, sandy beaches, and serene forest clearings where dappled sunlight filtered softly through the ancient, whispering leaves. However, perhaps the most singularly innovative architectural feature was the distinctive circular building situated at the very heart of the sanctuary. Conceived for what we might, in contemporary parlance, term group therapy, this unique space was where patients congregated to openly share their personal narratives, articulate their deepest fears, and voice their earnest hopes for healing. Asclepius possessed a profound insight that modern medicine is only now beginning to rediscover. That isolation frequently exacerbates the suffering of illness, whereas the supportive embrace of community can be profoundly therapeutic. Suffering shared is, in essence, suffering halved, he sagely explained to the architects as they meticulously planned the acoustics of the circular chamber. The magnificent dome ceiling was ingeniously engineered to convey even the softest whispered words clearly to every listener, thereby fostering an intimate atmosphere within a space capacious enough to accommodate dozens of individuals. When patients come to the realization that they are not alone in their pain, he asserted, the process of healing truly commences even before any specific medicine or intervention is applied. The initial wave of pilgrims began to arrive while construction was still actively underway, drawn by compelling reports of miraculous cures and the pervasive promise of compassionate care. They arrived bearing their ailments like cumbersome, heavy bundles, some proceeding with arduous, painful steps, others carried gently on litters by devoted family members. What struck observers most profoundly about these early patients was their palpable mixture of fervent hope and ingrained skepticism. Many had, no doubt, consulted numerous healers before, only to be repeatedly disillusioned by promises that ultimately proved hollow. Yet something about the Asclepian felt inherently different from the very moment they passed through its welcoming gates. Perhaps it was the gentle, yet highly efficient demeanor of the priests and attendants who greeted each new arrival with genuine inquiries about their comfort, rather than immediate demands for payment. Or perhaps it was the sanctuary's overarching atmosphere of serene purpose, where every single detail, from the thoughtful placement of benches to the deliberate selection of plants, seemed meticulously designed to promote inner peace rather than merely showcase ostentatious wealth. Asclepius himself moved with a purposeful grace through the bustling construction site, much like a master conductor orchestrating a complex, harmonious symphony. He engaged in detailed consultations with the stonemasons concerning the specific thermal properties of various types of marble, discerning which varieties would remain refreshingly cool during the oppressive summer heat and which would best retain warmth during the winter chills. He meticulously discussed with the gardeners the precise seasonal cycles of medicinal plants, ensuring that a continuous supply of fresh, potent herbs would be readily available throughout the entire year. No detail, however seemingly minor, was deemed too insignificant for his discerning attention if it held the potential to impact a patient's overall well-being. One might reasonably ponder how news of this extraordinary sanctuary managed to propagate so widely in an era devoid of modern communication technologies. The answer lay, quite simply, with the patients themselves, who, upon their return to their respective home communities, became fervent ambassadors for Asclepian healing. A prosperous merchant, whose debilitating chronic joint pain miraculously vanished after a month-long sojourn at the sanctuary, enthusiastically recounted tales of the miraculous treatments to everyone he encountered. A grieving mother, whose child recovered from a terrifying wasting disease, subsequently organized pilgrimages for other families grappling with similar crises. These compelling success stories collectively forged an extensive network of informal, yet highly effective, advertising that reached across the entire Greek world and even beyond its borders. Soon, requests began to pour in from distant cities, earnestly seeking assistance in establishing their own Asclepia. Asclepius responded by diligently training dedicated teams of priests and healers who could effectively disseminate his innovative methods to new geographical locations. However, he steadfastly insisted that each new sanctuary be thoughtfully adapted to its specific local environment and the unique needs of its community. Healing cannot be mass-produced with the uniformity of pottery, he firmly articulated to a delegation from Athens who expressed a desire to construct an exact replica of the original sanctuary. Each community must embark upon and discover its own distinctive path to wellness, just as each individual patient necessitates a personalized and unique course of treatment. This enlightened philosophy ensured that while all Asclepia shared fundamental common principles, each ultimately developed its own distinctive character and specialized areas of expertise. The renowned sanctuary located at coastal Epidaurus, for instance, gained widespread acclaim for its efficacy in treating respiratory ailments, ingeniously leveraging the beneficial sea breezes that seemed to possess the remarkable ability to clear congested lungs. Conversely, the mountain temple nestled in Tithareia specialized in the treatment of injuries and broken bones, utilizing the pristine, invigorating air and the therapeutic mineral springs of its higher elevations to significantly accelerate the healing process. The urban sanctuary established within the bustling city of Athens, meanwhile, focused its efforts on alleviating ailments of the mind and spirit, serving a populace often stressed by the relentless pace of city life and the tumultuous currents of political turmoil. Yet, irrespective of their individual characteristics and specific specializations, all Asclepia invariably shared certain essential features that profoundly reflected their founders' holistic and profound understanding of precisely how true healing genuinely operates. The discussion revolves around the fundamental operational principles of healing. These establishments are constructed upon aesthetically pleasing locales, specifically chosen to foster optimism merely by providing agreeable surroundings for individuals to inhabit. They meticulously integrate pragmatic medical interventions with profound spiritual rejuvenation, acknowledging the intrinsic connection between bodily and psychic suffering and the consequent necessity for their synchronous restoration. Crucially, their entire organizational framework is predicated upon the revolutionary tenet that therapeutic care ought to be universally accessible, irrespective of an individual's societal standing or financial capability. Affluent patrons are indeed cordially received, and their munificent contributions serve to bolster the sanctuary's sustenance, yet indigent supplicants are afforded an identical standard of attention. This unbiased methodology often perplexes certain commentators and incenses those whose livelihoods are predicated upon the conventional stratification within medical practice. Does a fractured osseous structure differentiate between an owner of noble lineage and one of common birth? Asclepius rhetorically retorts to those who challenged his administrative principles. Does a febrile condition discern societal standing? Malady renders all equally vulnerable. Consequently, healing must be uniformly accessible. This profound philosophical stance ultimately crystallized into one of his most enduring legacies in the realm of medicine: the revolutionary conviction that healthcare constitutes a fundamental human imperative, rather than an exclusive prerogative reserved for the privileged echelons of society. As the constellation of Asclepia expanded its reach, These sanctuaries began to assume roles extending beyond singular therapeutic applications. They evolved into epicenters of didactic instruction in medicine, where methodologies were disseminated and perfected. They routinely convened assemblages where practitioners from diverse geographical regions could exchange observations and glean insights from collective experiences. Furthermore, they curated extensive collections of medical treatises and comprehensive archives of botanical pharmacopoeia, thereby safeguarding therapeutic knowledge for posterity. These sacred precincts also commenced to mold the prevailing cultural comprehension of wellness and malady. Prior to the advent of Asclepius's teachings, malady was frequently interpreted as celestial retribution or an inescapable predestination. The Asclepia, however, served to illustrate the preventability of numerous afflictions through judicious nutritional habits, regular physical exertion, and prudent life decisions. They propagated the notion that the preservation of well-being holds parity with the eradication of infirmity, thereby pioneering concepts of prophylactic healthcare that appeared profoundly innovative to the sensibilities of antiquity. One can readily envision the quotidian existence within a fully developed Asclepion. It was characterized by the subtle vibrancy of deliberate endeavor, typical of places where significant undertakings transpire devoid of theatrics or urgency. Dawn invariably brought forth the resonant sound of sanctuary chimes, summoning supplicants to matutinal invocations and restorative physical regimens. The day would then progress via meticulously planned therapies, shared repasts formulated to bolster recuperation, didactic workshops empowering individuals in self-management, and vespertine assemblies fostering narrative exchange and camaraderie. The edifices themselves appeared to personify the therapeutic ethos, their architectural dimensions adhering to geometric principles that engendered understated equilibrium. Solar illumination penetrated through thoughtfully oriented fenestrations and clear stories, casting ephemeral designs that metamorphosed gradually with the diurnal cycle. Aquatic currents coursed through conduits and aqueducts, delivering both utilitarian advantages and the tranquil cadences that assuage disquieted psyches. Indeed, these venerable therapeutic sanctuaries remarkably foreshadowed numerous characteristics of contemporary medical institutions and care facilities. They comprehended the criticality of adequate air circulation, abundant ambient luminosity, and serene surroundings. They appreciated the merit of synergizing clinical interventions with psychological solace. Most notably, they initiated the synthesis of corporeal and transcendental recuperation, an approach that contemporary holistic healthcare is progressively re-embracing today. Yet perhaps their singularly profound pioneering achievement was the uncomplicated realization that recuperation flourishes most effectively within supportive networks of attentiveness, places where affliction is confronted with proficiency and empathy, and where optimism is cultivated in tandem with the organism's inherent ability for restoration. As one prepares for nocturnal repose tonight, one might visualize perambulating amidst such venerable therapeutic enclaves, experiencing the tranquility derived from the assurance that, perpetually, dedicated individuals labor to alleviate distress and reinstate integrity to fractured existences. One might indeed ponder how a reptile widely regarded with apprehension came to be emblematic of therapeutic endeavors. The profound connection between Asclepius and serpents unveils a significant insight into how the ancient Greeks understood medicine as a practice that necessitates engaging with our deepest anxieties, particularly the inevitability of demise and unearthing sagacity in unforeseen sources. Picture Asclepius as a youthful practitioner, still assimilating the profounder arcana of recuperation, transcending the tutelage received from Chiron within the sylvan depths. He has been summoned to attend to a juvenile victim of a poisonous Ophidian strike, and notwithstanding his burgeoning renown, this particular predicament instilled profound apprehension within him. The envenomation transpired several hours prior, and the infant's diminutive frame was already manifesting indicators of the toxin's lethal efficacy: distended integument, arduous respiration, the pallid visage portending the gradual dissipation of vitality. The kinship unit had exhausted every known palliative measure. They had administered topical applications prescribed by indigenous sagacious women, presented supplications at every hallowed site in their community, and even sought counsel from a seer who posited that solely celestial intercession could preserve their progeny. When they carried the child to Asclepius, their expectation was so tenuous it appeared poised to disintegrate at the slightest utterance of ill tidings. But rather than succumbing to despondency, Asclepius experienced an unforeseen sensation, an intense inquisitiveness about the precise animal responsible for this grave emergency. "Indicate the site of the Ophidian strike," he inquired, and the paterfamilias guided him to a craggy prominence where his offspring had been foraging for indigenous fruits. The reptile had vanished, but Asclepius scrutinized the milieu assiduously, observing the botanical species, the proximity of hydration, and the exact coordinates of the assault. Which species of serpent was it? He queried, and the paternal account corroborated Asclepius's conjecture. A variety renowned for its formidable toxicity, yet concurrently, as per ancient lore, credited with distinct therapeutic attributes. This paradox confounds numerous practitioners, but Asclepius had been contemplating the delicate demarcation separating toxin and medicament, recalling Chiron's instruction asserting that the administered quantity frequently dictates whether an agent inflicts detriment or bestows restoration. That night, as he maintained a nocturnal watch over the febrile infant, Asclepius experienced one of the lucid nocturnal visions that had grown progressively frequent, coincident with the maturation of his therapeutic faculties. In the vision, he perceived a colossal Ophidian entwined about the bole of an venerable arboreal specimen. The reptile's gaze conveyed sagacity rather than malevolence, and when it spoke, its utterance resonated with the accumulated knowledge of millennia. "That which you fail to comprehend, you fear," the chimerical serpent imparted. "But I am not your enemy. I epitomize metamorphosis. I am the potency that divests senescent integument to unveil nascent vitality. I am the agency capable of inducing morbidity or convalescence contingent upon its application. Absorb my teachings, and you shall apprehend enigmas beyond the grasp of fellow practitioners." When Asclepius awoke, the infant's pyrexia had abated, her respiration had stabilized, and a natural hue was reclaiming her pallid countenance. The critical juncture had elapsed, but the nocturnal vision's pronouncement persisted in reverberating. Over the following weeks, he commenced the meticulous investigation of Ophidians with the identical circumspection previously accorded to therapeutic flora. He uncovered the inherent extraordinary recuperative capacities of serpents themselves. They could reconstitute impaired cellular structures, endure injuries that would prove fatal to other organisms, and inexplicably counteract their autogenous toxin when exigency demands. Their faculty of ecdysis transmuted into a potent allegory for the revitalization inherent in therapeutic processes. The exfoliation of malady to expose underlying sound biological substrate. On a more pragmatic note, Asclepius ascertained that ophidian venom, when judiciously attenuated and meticulously compounded, possessed formidable medicinal efficacy. Minute quantities were capable of assuaging particular categories of algia, mitigating perilous edema, and even ameliorating certain pathologies impervious to alternative treatments. The crucial determinant resided in the comprehension of administration levels and compounding methodologies, proficiencies necessitating the identical scrupulous scrutiny he devoted to every facet of therapeutic practice. Reports of his triumphs with therapies derived from venom proliferated, and presently, fellow practitioners solicited instruction in these perilous yet efficacious modalities. Asclepius imparted his knowledge with customary circumspection, underscoring that engagement with such formidable agents demanded not merely technical dexterity, but also a profound veneration for their inherent might. Engage with ophidians as you would with divinities, he counseled, imbued with awe, meticulous readiness, and the realization that you are contending with potencies exceeding your own capacity. But the allegorical import of ophidians ultimately transcended their utilitarian pharmaceutical uses. Asclepius commenced to grasp that the serpent epitomized every inherent antinomy within the therapeutic process itself. It incarnates both annihilation and regeneration, toxin and remedy, apprehension and sagacity. Practitioners ought to cultivate the ability to engage with these inherent antinomies rather than endeavoring to reconcile them. The initial ophidian found domicile within his sacred precinct, seemingly by fortuitous happenstance. A convalescent individual recuperating from an arduous surgical procedure observed an innocuous garden serpent basking on a megalithic barrier adjacent to the therapeutic quarters. Rather than expelling it, Asclepius embraced its presence as an auspicious augury. Even the ophidians seek solace in this place, he quipped. Yet internally he sensed that an event of considerable import had transpired. Additional serpents subsequently arrived, perhaps attracted by the tranquil ambiance of the sanctuary or the plentiful availability of minor quarry flourishing within its meticulously cultivated grounds. Rather than perceiving them as nuisances or threats, Asclepius fostered their coexistence within judicious parameters. Supplicants, initially apprehensive of the ophidians, progressively came to regard them as beneficent custodians of the recuperative journey, guardians of the restorative journey. A striking phenomenon frequently observed was that individuals who successfully conquered their apprehension towards the sanctuary's resident ophidians often experienced profound advancements in their personal recovery. For instance, a veteran soldier, tormented by nocturnal terrors of combat, discovered a profound tranquility after observing a serpent meticulously shed its epidermis, finally comprehending that he, too, possessed the capacity to relinquish his distressing past. Similarly, a woman, immobilized by overwhelming apprehension concerning her malady, commenced her recuperation when a diminutive garden serpent trustingly coiled itself around her wrist during a period of contemplative meditation. Asclepius, addressing an assembly of revered priests and dedicated healers, expounded upon this symbology. Serpents, he articulated, impart invaluable lessons regarding metamorphosis, They unequivocally demonstrate that what might superficially appear as an ending, such as the sloughing of skin, the motionless suspense preceding a strike, or the potent, perilous venom, can, in fact, constitute an integral component of life's perpetual rejuvenation. Genuine healing frequently necessitates our willingness to divest ourselves of antiquated modes of existence, mirroring precisely how serpents discard their outgrown integuments to embrace new vitality. This profound realization regarding the serpent's emblematic significance directly led to the conceptualization and crafting of the staff, which subsequently emerged as Asclepius's preeminent and universally recognized emblem. Fashioned meticulously from resilient olive wood and elegantly entwined with a sinuous bronze serpent, this artifact powerfully symbolized the harmonious synthesis of innate healing wisdom with the potent metamorphic capability inherently embodied by these creatures. The staff transcended mere utility, serving concurrently as both a utilitarian instrument for the physical examination of ailing individuals and a hallowed artifact employed to channel and concentrate therapeutic energies during various restorative treatments. Its profound symbolism proved so compelling and influential that numerous other Asclepia, the healing sanctuaries dedicated to the god, promptly began to integrate the imagery and presence of serpents into their distinct healing methodologies and architectural designs. Within the sacred precincts, living serpents were carefully housed in dedicated enclosures, affording patients the unique opportunity to contemplate their inherent characteristics and draw instructive parallels from their natural existence. Beyond the live specimens, iconographic depictions of serpents permeated the sanctuaries, meticulously carved into durable stone, vividly painted upon expansive walls, and intricately wrought from resilient bronze and lustrous precious metals. Yet, Asclepius steadfastly ensured that this pervasive symbolism never eclipsed the tangible exigencies of actively engaging with actual Ophidians. He meticulously cultivated and trained expert Ophidian custodians, individuals possessing an intimate understanding of serpentine behavior, capable of maintaining these creatures securely and responsibly within the sanctuary grounds. Furthermore, he instituted stringent protocols for the judicious application of venom-based medicines, meticulously designed to mitigate inherent hazards while simultaneously amplifying their medicinal efficacy. The romanticized perception of serpents as agents of healing was thus perpetually counterbalanced by a profound reverence for their intrinsic power and their undeniable potential for harm. As Asclepius's renown burgeoned across the land, individuals increasingly began to recount nocturnal visions wherein the god himself manifested, frequently accompanied by serpents that imparted profound restorative sagacity. These spectral apparitions became so ubiquitous and deeply ingrained in the collective consciousness that the distinctive snake-wrapped staff ultimately emerged as the deity's quintessential emblem, surpassing in immediate recognition even his anthropomorphic representation. Patients, upon awakening from these profoundly therapeutic dreams, often described a palpable impression of benign Ophidians gracefully traversing their physical forms, leaving in their wake distinct trails of soothing warmth and palpable relief precisely where prior discomfort and suffering had persisted. The burgeoning medical profession, with a deep-seated intuition, embraced the serpent symbol with fervent conviction, instinctively grasping that it profoundly encapsulated medicine's intrinsic essence. The very act of healing inherently entailed significant perils, the peril of inadvertently exacerbating existing conditions, the often uncomfortable necessity of acknowledging disquieting realities, and indeed, the inherent risk associated with the transformative process of change itself. The potent imagery of the serpent served as a perpetual memento for healers, reminding them that their vocation involved engaging with potent energies and formidable challenges, which unequivocally demanded an approach steeped in both profound wisdom and unwavering humility. Many centuries subsequently, as the formidable Roman Empire disseminated the therapeutic methodologies championed by Asclepius across the entire civilized sphere, the potent serpent symbol invariably accompanied their expansion. Its distinctive form became ubiquitous, emblazoned upon coinage, intricately etched onto medical instruments, and proudly displayed on the signage identifying healing establishments. The staff of Asclepius grew so inextricably linked to the healing arts that its emblematic significance persisted beyond the collapse of the classical world, ultimately transforming into the iconic caduceus that, even in contemporary times, frequently designates medical facilities and institutions. As this comprehensive investigation into the symbology of serpents and healing draws to a close, one might profitably contemplate the profound implications these venerable perspectives offer regarding the confrontation of personal fears. Asclepius, through his discerning observations, recognized that evading sources of apprehension frequently bestows upon them greater dominion over us, whereas engaging with our trepidations through a lens of respect and profound understanding possesses the capacity to transmute them into invaluable founts of sagacity. Perhaps this ancient lesson holds particular resonance for our contemporary relationship with illness and the inevitable reality of mortality. Much like the serpents with whom Asclepius learned to collaborate, disease and death ought not to be perceived merely as adversaries to be vanquished, but rather as intrinsic natural forces capable of imparting profound lessons concerning the inestimable value of vitality and well-being. The healing professions persist in utilizing the serpent symbol precisely because it serves as a potent reminder that medicine achieves its most efficacious outcomes when it judiciously recognizes both the inherent perils and the profound metamorphic potential inextricably linked to the intricate healing process itself. Throughout antiquity, water has consistently been revered for its profound therapeutic efficacy, and consequently, the revered sanctuaries dedicated to Asclepius were frequently strategically situated in close proximity to natural springs, whose chalybeate waters, imbued with therapeutic minerals, possessed the remarkable capacity to alleviate maladies that traditional herbal remedies and even surgical interventions could not effectively address. However, the profound therapeutic impact derived from these sacred baths extended far beyond mere physical cleansing. Their true potency resided in the psycho-spiritual metamorphosis that emerged from systematic ceremonial ablution and the fundamental human solace inherent in the experience of being attentively cared for. One might vividly envision approaching the salubrious thermal waters at Epidaurus during the liminal hours of dawn, when ethereal vapor ascends gracefully from the heated pools, enveloping the entire bathing area in an almost numinous ambiance. These life-giving springs originate from profound subterranean reservoirs, transporting a rich array of minerals that have gradually dissolved from primordial geological strata throughout their arduous, extended journey to the surface. The resultant water possesses a subtle ferrous tang on the palate, accentuated by distinct sulfurous nuances that eloquently attest to the intricate telluric alchemical processes occurring deep within the Earth's hidden chemistry. Asclepius chanced upon these particular thermal sources during his formative peregrinations, initially attracted by anecdotal accounts describing their anomalous therapeutic characteristics. Indigenous shepherds had, for generations, possessed ancestral knowledge that sheep afflicted with cutaneous maladies experienced significant amelioration after imbibing from certain pools, and that wounded animals often gravitated towards these springs by innate compulsion. However, it was Asclepius, with his acute perceptiveness, who first truly comprehended how to methodically exploit the restorative capabilities of the water in a structured and organized manner. The complex geology of the area yielded distinct hydrogeological effusions from divergent subterranean origins, each characterized by its unique chemico-mineral profile and specific medicinal attributes. The geothermally superheated outflows, warmed by their proximity to deep underground thermal sources, demonstrated exceptional efficacy in alleviating arthritic discomfort and muscular rigidity. Conversely, the more temperate hydroeffusions, abundant in ferrous compounds and other essential trace elements, provided significant relief for patients suffering from gastrointestinal disturbances and specific hematological conditions. Finally, the frigid hypothermal flows, which remained almost icy even amidst the summer heat, were found to powerfully stimulate peripheral perfusion and appeared to fortify the organism's inherent immunological defenses against various diseases. However, Asclepius swiftly apprehended that the tangible physicochemical characteristics of the water, while undeniably significant, constituted merely a fraction of their holistic restorative capacity. He recognized that the very immersion process itself, encompassing the sacred rite of purification, the profound sensation of enveloping warmth buoying the corporeal form, and the transient abeyance of mundane anxieties, collectively engendered conducive mental states, fostering recuperation in profound ways that solely pharmacological or surgical interventions could not replicate. One might envision Asclepius meticulously formulating the systematic ablutionary regimens that would subsequently become ubiquitous across all Asclepian healing centers. Patients did not simply casually plunge into the thermal pools akin to recreational swimmers. Instead, they adhered to meticulously choreographed procedures specifically designed to prime both their corporeal and mental faculties for the impending healing process. This solemn ritual typically commenced in the pre-auroral hours, a time when the springs existed in their most unsullied state, and the ambient atmosphere was optimally suited for profound introspection and spiritual receptivity. The initial phase involved comprehensive purification, extending beyond mere corporeal ablution to encompass a profound ritualistic lustration that readied individuals for profound regeneration. Patients first immersed themselves in unadorned fresh water, utilizing rudimentary saponaceous compounds crafted from olive oil and ash to eradicate the accumulated grime and perspiration of their arduous journeys. While this preparatory ablution undeniably fulfilled pragmatic requirements, it simultaneously facilitated a crucial psychological shift, enabling patients to transition seamlessly from the prosaic preoccupations of daily life into the hallowed precinct of recuperation. The subsequent approach to accessing the restorative thermal pools themselves strictly adhered to venerable customs of veneration. Patients would present supplications and votive offerings, ranging from ephemeral blossoms and minted currency to cherished personal effects, each emblematic of their unwavering dedication to the healing process. They would then immerse themselves deliberately into the water, allowing their physical forms to acclimatize progressively to both its temperature and intricate mineral content. While assistive personnel provided gentle direction to those requiring aid, the primacy was invariably afforded to individual encounter and profound personal experience, as opposed to prescriptive intervention. The liquid element retains a profound memory. Asclepius would frequently impart to patients as they prepared for their initial curative immersion. Psyche, it remembers the chthonic abysses it has traversed, the ancient geological formations it has caressed, and the arcane knowledge assimilated within subterranean gloom. When you enter these sacred springs, you become a participant in that primordial recollection. Allow the water, therefore, to impart to your corporeal being the innate wisdom of restoration and guide it back to a state of profound well-being. The renowned healing springs consistently drew individuals afflicted with intractable ailments unresponsive to conventional therapies. For instance, a seasoned combatant presented himself, his articulations rendered rigid by ancient injuries to such an extent that he suffered extreme ambulation impediment. Decades of arduous martial endeavors had left his corporeal form inscribed with a topography of chronic pain and functional restrictions, which no amount of orthodox therapeutic approaches had been able to effectively address. The hot springs, with their elevated geomineral concentration and pervasive thermic energy, commenced the gradual process of re-establishing articular suppleness to joints that had previously seemed irreversibly immobilized. However, the seasoned combatant's recuperation transcended mere corporeal restoration. As he immersed himself in the therapeutic warmth, amidst a fellowship of fellow sufferers confronting analogous adversities, he gradually commenced vocalizing hitherto suppressed narratives of experiences he had found inexpressible to family or companions. The sacred springs thus transformed into a confessional, a hallowed forum where the psychic scars of conflict could at last be recognized and therapeutically engaged. His corporeal rigidity diminished, not solely due to the hydromineral properties of the water, but profoundly because his psyche finally attained license to relinquish the accumulated psychological burden and tension it had carried for such an extended period. In another instance, a woman presented herself, seeking succor from a chronic dermatological affliction that had tormented her from an early age. The relentless pruritus and erythema had rendered her acutely diffident and socially secluded, severely constricting her capacity for interpersonal connection and full communal engagement. The sulfurous thermal waters demonstrated efficacy in ameliorating her somatic manifestations. Nevertheless, the truly profound metamorphosis emanated from her communal immersion, alongside fellow females who embraced her unconditionally, devoid of critical appraisal or visceral aversion, thereby fostering a sense of belonging and acceptance that transcended her physical ailment. The communal nature of the healing springs profoundly challenges conventional societal norms, yielding benefits of immense therapeutic value. Within these sacred waters, the customary distinctions of social class, material wealth, and elevated status become entirely moot. Every individual steps into the baths unadorned and vulnerable, bound together by their shared human condition and a collective yearning for restoration. This mandated parity fosters unique opportunities for genuine human connection and empathetic understanding, interactions that would simply not materialize in typical social environments. Asclepius, with discerning wisdom, meticulously orchestrated the architectural layout of the bathing facilities to facilitate this democratic approach to wellness. The various thermal and mineral springs were thoughtfully positioned to ensure that individuals presenting with diverse maladies could access the specific aquatic therapies best suited to their individual requirements. Yet, expansive communal zones were also integrated, encouraging intermingling among all patrons, irrespective of their particular afflictions. Plush, ergonomic seating arrangements strategically encircling the restorative pools invited both convivial dialogue and tranquil repose. Lush, verdant gardens offered secluded havens for individuals desiring personal reflection, simultaneously imparting an aesthetic splendor designed to elevate the human spirit. The diurnal cadence of activities at the springs harmonized with the inherent biological rhythms of the human body, thereby bolstering the organism's intrinsic recuperative mechanisms. Ablutions conducted at the break of day capitalized on the body's innate surge of revitalizing energy, employing cooler aquatic immersions to stimulate blood flow and prime the physique for the day's impending engagements. Sessions held during the zenith of the sun were dedicated to targeted remedial interventions, with individuals dedicating specific, predetermined durations to waters meticulously selected for their unique ailments. As dusk descended, the focus of the baths shifted towards profound relaxation, meticulously preparing the body and mind for truly restorative slumber. Yet, arguably, the most pioneering facet of Asclepian hydrotherapy lay in its profound understanding that diverse individuals necessitate distinct methodologies for aquatic recuperation. Certain patrons derived significant advantage from strenuous natation, which effectively reconditions atrophied musculature and enhances overall cardiovascular vitality. Conversely, others were better served by serene flotation, a technique that cradled compromised extremities, facilitating the body's inherent mending processes unburdened by undue strain. Furthermore, some individuals thrived on the invigorating properties of mineral-laden waters, whereas others exhibited a more favorable response to pristine spring water, which purifies and detoxifies without overstimulating delicate physiological systems. Asclepius himself personally developed and instructed a cadre of highly specialized attendants, possessing an intricate comprehension of both the geophysical characteristics of the diverse springs and the nuanced emotional requirements of a wide spectrum of patients. These dedicated aquatic therapists were meticulously tutored to discern the faint yet telling indicators signaling optimal mineral absorption, opportune moments for thermal adjustments, instances where communal engagement would be advantageous, or when solitary reflection should be sacrosanct. During their rigorous instruction, he famously imparted, "The restoration achieved through water is as much an intricate art form as it is a precise scientific discipline." He further elaborated, "Your imperative is to perceive not merely the corporeal necessities, but also the profound yearnings of the psyche. There are occasions when a patient requires solitary communion within the water's soothing embrace. At other times, they necessitate the comforting presence of fellow sufferers who comprehend their anguish. Your paramount duty is to judiciously ascertain which mode of healing the particular instant demands." The demonstrable efficacy of these therapeutic springs precipitated their widespread integration into the Asclepius sanctuaries established across the Hellenic world. Each individual sanctuary meticulously customized these healing protocols, to align with its specific hydrological endowments and the unique demographic profile of its patient base. For instance, temples nestled in mountainous regions harnessed the invigorating chill of glacial streams alongside the restorative warmth of geothermal springs. Sanctuaries situated along the littoral incorporated baths, utilizing saline ocean waters, which not only offered distinct mineral compositions, but also harnessed the inherent advantages of oceanic tidal fluctuations. In densely populated urban centers, temples ingeniously engineered artificial springs, sourcing water from remote locations and meticulously adjusting its temperature through heating or cooling mechanisms as therapeutic requirements dictated. The venerable tradition of curative ablutions transcended the confines of the healing temples themselves, profoundly shaping the evolution of communal bathing establishments across the entire ancient world. The formidable Roman Empire, notably, enthusiastically adopted the fundamental tenet of aquatic remediation, erecting grandiose bath complexes that seamlessly integrated medical therapeutic applications with vibrant social engagement. This enduring legacy reverberates through the healing baths found within medieval monastic infirmaries and persists even in contemporary spa treatments, which continue to honor the nomenclature and foundational tenets of Asclepian hydrotherapy. As individuals journey towards their own restorative slumber each night, one might perhaps conjure the serene cadence of hallowed waters coursing over venerable stonework, gently dispelling the day's accumulated pressures and meticulously preparing the spirit for the profound revitalization heralded by dawn. The therapeutic springs consecrated to Asclepius serve as a poignant testament to the enduring truth that often the most elemental palliatives, pure water, soothing warmth, and tranquil periods for introspection endure as the most potent forms of healing. Yet, on cold mornings, Lysander's fingers refused to bend properly. His articulations throbbed with a profound, unyielding discomfort that even sustained exposure to the hearth's warmth could not assuage. Mundane operations, such as gripping his implements or working with clay, transformed into arduous tests of sheer fortitude. The regional medical practitioners, regrettably, proffered conflicting counsel. One advocated complete repose, another championed strenuous physical activity, whilst a third proposed dietary modifications that appeared entirely disconnected from his specific affliction. These restorative springs had, over millennia, primed innumerable supplicants for an immersion into the more profound arcana of Asclepian therapeutics. To illuminate this process, the narrative now traces the trajectory of one such seeker on their personal odyssey toward enlightenment. To genuinely comprehend the subtle efficacy with which these venerable sanctuaries wrought their understated marvels, it becomes imperative to metaphorically tread the path of an individual who undertook such a hallowed pilgrimage. Lysander embarked on his journey, not in pursuit of instantaneous, dramatic remedies, but rather in anticipation of the progressive metamorphosis attainable through devoted engagement in an endeavor transcending individual tribulation. He was Lysander, a skilled artisan from the city-state of Corinth, whose hands had progressively succumbed to an agonizing rigidity, jeopardizing not only his means of sustenance, but the very essence of his personal identity. For 3 decades, he had masterfully molded clay into utilitarian and aesthetic vessels, adorning both opulent patrician residences and modest plebeian hearths. His hands possessed an intimate acquaintance with the tactile qualities of fine earth, the exact calibration of force required to erect stable walls, and the delicate finesse that fashioned elegant rims and functional handles, pleasing both the visual and haptic senses. The weighty decision to solicit aid from the closest sanctuary was not one Lysander arrived at with alacrity. The arduous pilgrimage would consume 3 days in each direction, a substantial period of absence from his craft that he could scarcely endure financially. Moreover, the sanctuary mandated contributions that he was uncertain he could furnish. Most psychologically taxing of all, the act of soliciting divine intervention felt akin to a confession of his own professional inadequacy, an acknowledgement of a need for succor transcending mortal capabilities. Crucially, however, the very act of undertaking the journey afforded him an invaluable expanse for contemplation. Liberated from the relentless exigencies of his livelihood and familial obligations, for the initial time in many months, he could ponder his ailment without the concurrent anxieties of incomplete commissions, dissatisfied patrons, or the domestic requirements contingent upon his income. This newfound cognitive liberty ultimately proved pivotal for the restorative journey awaiting him. Nevertheless, the gnawing tendrils of desperation eventually eclipsed his artisan's pride, compelling him to traverse the sun-baked, dusty thoroughfare leading to the sanctuary. His meager satchel containing propitiatory offerings and sufficient provisions for a multi-day sojourn. The pilgrimage itself, unbeknownst to him initially, commenced the therapeutic regimen. While he remained unaware of it at the outset, the act of walking compelled him to articulate his agonizing hands and arms through unaccustomed motions, thereby stimulating blood circulation through his rigid articulations and progressively alleviating the tightness in tissues that had atrophied from prolonged inactivity. The Asclepion, the revered healing complex, slowly materialized into view as Lysander surmounted a gentle incline on the 3rd day of his arduous journey. Below him unfolded an intricate agglomeration of edifices, thoughtfully arrayed amidst natural springs and hallowed groves of ancient trees. The architectural vernacular conveyed an impression of enduring stability and profound tranquility, rather than ostentatious magnificence. Structures of stone, mellowed to a subdued gray by the passage of time. Courtyards paved with polished flagstones, smoothed by the ceaseless tread of innumerable pilgrims, and meticulously cultivated gardens, nurturing a diverse array of therapeutic flora. Lysander's initial interaction upon reaching the sanctuary's entrance was with a temple attendant, whose duty it was to welcome new arrivals. This individual was not a hierophant conducting sacred rites, but rather more akin to a medical administrator, whose primary concern was to gather pragmatic intelligence regarding his affliction. She inquired, meticulously inscribing her findings onto a wax tablet. "For what duration has this suffering afflicted you? What remedial measures have you previously undertaken? Is there a familial predisposition to comparable maladies?" The meticulousness and pragmatic orientation of these inquiries astonished him. The experience resonated more with the methodical consultation of a medical practitioner than with the solemn supplication to a deity, although, as he would discover, these two distinct practices were far from mutually exclusive within the Asclepion. The attendant proceeded to elucidate the sanctuary's established routine with the unadorned efficiency characteristic of an individual who had shepherded myriad pilgrims through this identical regimen. She elucidated, indicating a structure from which ethereal plumes of steam ascended into the crisp morning atmosphere. Initially, one will undergo ritual ablution within the hallowed springs. She continued, "Subsequently, Offerings are to be presented at Asclepius's altar, followed by a period of preparatory contemplation for the ensuing therapeutic slumber. The divine manifests its wisdom to individuals through diverse conduits, she clarified. But this preparatory phase is instrumental in ensuring one's receptivity to whatever guidance the benevolent God may bestow. However, the tangible physiological advantages were overshadowed by the profound psychological resonance of receiving such meticulous and adept care. For the first time since the onset of his affliction, Lysander perceived a genuine comprehension of his suffering. The dedicated attendants, it was clear, had encountered innumerable instances mirroring his own predicament. They possessed an intimate knowledge of precisely which articulations exacerbated his pain, which postures offered solace, and how to manipulate his compromised joints without inducing further distress. The prescribed bathing ritual proved to be considerably more intricate than Lysander had initially anticipated. Attendants meticulously escorted him through a sequence of pools, each maintained at varying thermal levels, elucidating the specific remedial attributes inherent in each immersion. Cooler waters, they explained, served to mitigate inflammatory responses, whilst warmer ablutions were designed to induce muscular relaxation and enhance systemic circulation. In the interstices between these aquatic phases, they carefully applied unguents infused with a bespoke blend of botanical extracts, specifically formulated to target his particular ailment. The aromatic profile of these preparations was a complex bouquet, redolent with the crisp scent of pine, the refreshing pungency of mint, and the subtle fragrances of other unidentified herbaceous flora. "Your hands recount a profound narrative," remarks one of the bath attendants, her touch gentle as she massages an aromatic elixir into the pilgrim's stiffened digits. For countless seasons, they have toiled diligently, sculpting exquisite forms from humble clay. Now they must embark upon a different regimen of labor, the imperative task of mending themselves. Her insightful observation unveils a perspective the pilgrim had not previously contemplated. That true recuperation might necessitate not merely alleviating discomfort, but fundamentally reconfiguring one's intrinsic bond with their artistic vocation. Asclepius orchestrates recovery through a multitude of channels, the officiating priest elucidates, carefully placing the pilgrim's offering vase amidst other sacred tributes on the hallowed altar. Occasionally, solace arrives through the ephemeral tapestry of dreams. At other times, it manifests through the potent medicaments we administer. And frequently, it emerges from deliberate alterations in one's daily existence and occupational habits. Cultivate an openness to embrace assistance, irrespective of its guise. This counsel ultimately reveals itself to possess a far greater depth than its initial utterance suggested. The solemn offering ceremony unfolds as the late afternoon descends, as the sun's descending rays transmute the temple's majestic marble columns into shimmering gold. The pilgrim presents their devotional offerings, a modest vase, crafted during periods of greater physical ease, a collection of coins, and a written supplication articulating their fervent aspirations for restoration. The priest, receiving these tokens of devotion, treats them with profound veneration, not perceiving them as mere remuneration for services rendered, but rather as authentic manifestations of the pilgrim's unwavering belief in the inherent efficacy of the healing journey. The pilgrim finds a seat adjacent to a woman whose persistent, debilitating headaches have compelled her pilgrimage from the distant metropolis of Athens, and directly opposite a youthful warrior whose grievous battle injuries steadfastly resist proper cicatrization. Although their specific afflictions diverge markedly from the pilgrim's own, their shared odyssey of seeking therapeutic intervention, a poignant confluence of fervent hope and gnawing desperation, coupled with a gradual willingness to embrace methodologies they once would have summarily dismissed, mirrors the pilgrim's personal trajectory with uncanny precision. The evening repast, thoughtfully prepared for the assembled pilgrims, masterfully integrates nutritional sustenance with targeted therapeutic benefits. The fare, though unpretentious, is meticulously selected. Fish, replete with omega-rich oils renowned for their anti-inflammatory properties, verdant vegetables, chosen for their inherent restorative qualities, and wholesome bread, baked from grains designed to furnish sustained vitality without inducing digestive distress. Of even greater import, the communal act of dining facilitates encounters with other earnest seekers, whose recounted experiences offer both profound consolation and invaluable enlightenment. "I have undertaken this pilgrimage thrice," confides an aged merchant, whose persistent gastric disturbances have afflicted him for many years. "My initial sojourn addressed my physical ailments. The subsequent visit deepened my comprehension. This current attendance I dedicate to cultivating acceptance for the unchangeable, whilst assiduously striving to ameliorate that which can be improved." His reflective declaration intimates that genuine healing encompasses not merely somatic amelioration, but a profound metamorphosis in one's fundamental relationship with infirmity and inherent limitations. The very design of the sleeping chamber itself actively contributes to the restorative process through its meticulous conception. The quiescent space is neither lavishly appointed nor starkly ascetic, but rather exquisitely calibrated to foster profound repose and facilitate receptive dream states. Plush, yielding bedding cradles the body gently, obviating any pressure points that might disrupt slumber. A subtle, continuous airflow delivers invigorating, fresh air, devoid of intrusive drafts. Discreet illumination permits movement without the jarring impact of harsh brightness, and the perpetual, soothing murmur of flowing water establishes a natural cadence, profoundly conducive to deep, restorative sleep. "Refrain from supplicating for unattainable remedies," counsels the sagacious priest, who presides over the evening session. "Instead, petition for profound insight. What profound lessons does your affliction seek to impart? How might you strategically collaborate with your inherent limitations, rather than merely engaging in a futile struggle against them? What fundamental adjustments in your daily existence might genuinely foster true healing?" These poignant inquiries subtly redirect the pilgrim's focus from an earnest quest for miraculous intervention towards a more sagacious pursuit of inherent wisdom. The preparatory regimen for the therapeutic sleep commences following the evening meal, encompassing detailed instruction and practical techniques designed to cultivate meaningful nocturnal visions. This constitutes no arcane or mystical rite, but rather pragmatic guidance founded upon centuries of meticulous observation concerning the precise conditions that most effectively promote profoundly therapeutic dreams. The pilgrim is instructed in diaphragmatic breathing exercises designed to quell anxious rumination, meditative practices intended to silence incessant mental chatter, and structured methods for formulating questions that assist the subconscious mind in processing complex challenges during periods of slumber. The ensuing days represent a harmonious fusion of tangible medical intervention and profound spiritual introspection. Morning calisthenics, meticulously tailored to the pilgrim's specific condition, assist in preserving suppleness while concurrently augmenting physical fortitude and reinforcing musculature. These movements are characterized by their gentle yet deliberate nature, more akin to an expressive dance than a rigid medical regimen. Afternoon sessions are dedicated to acquiring innovative techniques for manipulating clay, methodologies that gracefully accommodate the pilgrim's altered capabilities rather than demanding a futile struggle against them. The pilgrim's initial night in the sanctuary brings forth dreams, yet not the dramatic, divine manifestation that had been somewhat anticipated. Instead, the nocturnal vision transports the pilgrim to their workshop, not the cramped, anxiety-ridden space it had recently become, but rather the cherished sanctuary it represented in earlier years when they first mastered their artisanal craft. Within the dream's ethereal landscape, their hands glide with effortless fluidity, molding clay into exquisite forms that appear to spontaneously emerge from the very essence of the earth itself. Upon awakening, the pilgrim recounts the dream's intricate details to one of the sanctuary's attending priests, who diligently assists in deciphering its potential significations. Perhaps Asclepius endeavors to rekindle your recollection of the profound joy you once discovered in your vocation, he thoughtfully posits. Genuine healing might encompass not merely the physical remediation of your hands, but rather the rediscovery of that serene mental state which underpinned your most exceptional craftsmanship. However, perhaps the most profoundly transformative aspect of the pilgrim's sojourn stems from observing the myriad other supplicants as they navigate their individual healing trajectories. The pilgrim witnesses instances of sudden revelation and periods of profound despondency, dramatic ameliorations, and subtle, incremental adjustments that collectively culminate in significant, enduring change. Most importantly, the pilgrim discerns that the healing process rarely conforms to anyone's initial preconceived notions, but frequently surpasses them in utterly unforeseen and remarkable ways. Your hands possess an inherent sagacity you have yet to fully acknowledge, explains the venerable master potter, whose expertise lies in imparting adaptive techniques to pilgrims grappling with analogous physical constraints. They intuitively comprehend the precise requirements of the clay. Place your unwavering trust in that innate knowledge, even when the physical motions feel distinctly unfamiliar compared to former times. He demonstrates ingenious methods for grasping tools that mitigate strain, postures that uniformly distribute pressure, and work rhythms that judiciously intersperse periods of rest before the onset of debilitating fatigue. A diligent farmer learns to proficiently manage chronic back pain not by entirely eradicating it, but by cultivating specific work rhythms that effectively preempt debilitating flare-ups. A seasoned soldier discovers that his formidable battle scars embody profound wisdom regarding survival and unwavering courage, empowering him to judiciously guide younger recruits away from superfluous perils. A shrewd merchant ascertains that her pervasive chronic anxiety, when subjected to proper understanding and analysis, actually furnishes invaluable insights into fluctuating market conditions that elude the perception of other traders. The pilgrim's personal healing trajectory adheres to a similar paradigm of progressive enlightenment rather than instantaneous remediation. By the conclusion of their extended stay, Their hands have not miraculously regained their youthful pliancy, yet they have assiduously acquired novel methodologies for working that significantly alleviate discomfort while meticulously preserving their artisanal proficiency. More significantly, the pilgrim has forged a fundamentally altered relationship with their physical condition, perceiving it not as an absolute impediment, but rather as an auspicious invitation to embark upon a path of deeper mastery. The culminating ceremony, preceding the pilgrim's departure, involves the creation of a votive offering, meticulously crafted to encapsulate their transformative experiences at the sanctuary. In stark contrast to the hopeful supplications presented upon their arrival, this inscribed tablet meticulously records heartfelt gratitude for specific insights gleaned and tangible improvements realized. I embarked upon this journey seeking to reinstate my former capacities, the pilgrim inscribes. I depart endowed with superior ones. As the pilgrim retraces their steps, walking away from the hallowed Asclepian along the very path that first led them there mere days prior, they carry with them more than just practical strategies for managing their physical condition. They have internalized a comprehensive paradigm for confronting adversity, a model that seamlessly integrates rational therapeutic approaches with profound spiritual receptivity, individual diligent effort with robust communal encouragement, and the serene acceptance of limitations with an unwavering commitment to persistent self-improvement. The homeward journey affords ample opportunity to meticulously integrate these newfound insights into the fabric of daily existence. The pilgrim diligently practices the exercises meticulously learned at the sanctuary, conscientiously experiments with the innovative techniques for working with clay, and gradually implements judicious modifications in their workshop routines, all designed to foster enduring well-being rather than merely prioritizing ephemeral productivity. The profound process of healing continues unabated within the confines of their own home, and now, crucially, the pilgrim possesses the intrinsic knowledge of how to actively participate in its ongoing unfolding. Perhaps the most astonishing characteristic of this sacred pilgrimage experience lies in its profound sense of the utterly commonplace. Despite its occurrence within a hallowed precinct consecrated to divine intervention, the true marvel was not a dramatic, instantaneous miracle, but rather a gradual, holistic metamorphosis achieved through patient, unwavering attention to the entirety of the individual. Body, intellect, and spirit, harmoniously interwoven. This enlightened approach to healing, originally pioneered within the sanctuaries dedicated to Asclepius, continues to exert a profound and pervasive influence upon contemporary therapeutic practices in ways both overtly discernible and subtly nuanced. As one traces this narrative arc, from initial suffering through earnest seeking to eventual gradual healing, it becomes evident how the sanctuary's philosophical framework reverently acknowledges both human volition and divine beneficence. The celestial powers impart wisdom and present opportune moments, yet the pilgrims themselves are still incumbent upon the daily labor of applying these insights to the exigencies of real life. Healing thus manifests as a symbiotic collaboration between earthly endeavor and celestial grace. Neither element sufficient in isolation, yet together capable of achieving a profound transformation that neither could have independently realized. One might readily envision a stroll amidst the venerable ruins of Epidaurus, the most celebrated of all Asclepian sanctuaries, where countless such votive tablets once adorned the sacred temple walls. While the majority have succumbed to the relentless passage of time and the depredations of opportunistic treasure hunters, a sufficient number have providentially endured, offering precious glimpses into the lives of individuals who discovered within these hallowed grounds something utterly unattainable elsewhere. Not merely corporeal restoration, but a profound resurgence of hope and renewed purpose, rendering life imminently worth living once more. And a renewed sense of purpose that made life worth living again. The profound metamorphosis experienced by countless supplicants, much like Lysander, found its most lasting manifestation in the inscribed stelae that appreciative individuals left behind within Asclepius's sacred sanctuaries. These epigraphic records, whose surfaces were polished smooth by the passage of centuries and the devout touch of many hands, meticulously safeguard not merely personal accounts of recovery, but rather a collective declaration illuminating the operational principles of ancient therapeutic practices. Its benevolent interventions achieved through a blend of forbearance, sagacity, and meticulous consideration of the entire human being, encompassing body, mind, and spirit. The very physical composition of these ancient tablets offers insights into archaic medical practices, just as profoundly as the narratives meticulously etched upon their facades. Their construction often utilized indigenous geological materials, employing opulent marble when financial circumstances permitted generous benefactors, yet more frequently fashioned from humble limestone, or indeed from organic timber which has, over the vast expanse of time, inevitably disintegrated into mere particulate matter. The textual content varied considerably, ranging from sophisticated literary compositions meticulously crafted by trained epigraphers, to unpretentious, sincere declarations etched by the patients themselves, utilizing whatever rudimentary artistic aptitude they possessed. This diversity in material and craftsmanship underscores the widespread accessibility and deeply personal nature of these votive offerings. Ambrosia, a resident of Athens, afflicted by ocular opacities that had rendered her sightless, underwent the ritual incubation within the sacred precinct, whereupon she experienced a divine revelation. In her dream, the deity appeared to draw near and, with a gentle touch of his digits, restored her vision. Upon the arrival of daybreak, her sight was perfectly restored, enabling her to perceive her surroundings with unclouded clarity. This particular epigraph, initially unearthed in disparate pieces and subsequently reassembled through meticulous scholarly effort, stands as an emblematic example among hundreds of analogous accounts of recovery, which invariably integrated tangible therapeutic interventions with elements that resist straightforward rational elucidation, hinting at a blend of the empirical and the numinous. A separate inscribed slab chronicles the story of Aristo from Troezen, who had reportedly carried a pregnancy for an extraordinary period of 5 years without experiencing parturition. Following her nocturnal vigil within the hallowed grounds, she dreamt of a serpent making contact with her abdomen, and remarkably, within a single year thereafter, she successfully delivered a male child. Contemporary medical understanding posits that this particular instance likely involved a form of pseudocyesis, or a complex gynecological ailment, which ultimately yielded to the synergistic combination of physical therapeutic measures and the profound psychological reassurance inherent in the sanctuary's comprehensive, holistic methodology, demonstrating the profound interplay between mind and body in healing. One might readily discern the distinct divergence between these archaic medical chronicles and contemporary clinical case studies, particularly in their integration of meticulous clinical observation with profound spiritual interpretation. The narrative recounting Ambrosia's cataract surgery, for this is almost unequivocally the nature of the procedure, albeit articulated within a mythological framework, incorporates specific particulars that strongly indicate authentic medical intervention, simultaneously preserving the respectful and devout stylistic register befitting sacred therapeutic practices. This duality highlights a worldview where the divine and the empirical were not seen as mutually exclusive, but rather as complementary forces in the healing process. Hermodikos, hailing from Lampsakos, was afflicted by a debilitating paralysis affecting his corporeal functions. During his period of therapeutic incubation within the sanctuary, the deity purportedly restored his health and subsequently instructed him to transport the largest possible stone he could manage to the temple as a votive offering of gratitude. The individual successfully conveyed this monumental stone, which presently reposes prominently before the sacred edifice. This formidable megalith endures to this day. A colossal block whose sheer mass would present a significant challenge even to an individual in robust health, serving as a tangible testament to a healing process that re-established not merely physical mobility, but also profound corporeal strength and renewed personal assurance, symbolizing a complete restoration of vigor and self-belief. The various epigraphs clearly indicate that the therapeutic efficacy of Asclepian practices stemmed as much from profound psychological transformation as from direct physical intervention. Numerous inscribed records detail ailments that, in contemporary diagnostic terms, would be classified as psychosomatic, manifesting as genuine physiological symptoms originating from profound emotional or spiritual disquietude, conditions that were often intractable to purely conventional medical approaches. The sanctuary's comprehensive methodology, which embraced the integrated treatment of the corporeal, mental, and spiritual dimensions of an individual, frequently yielded remarkable outcomes in cases that utterly perplexed practitioners of purely physical medicine, thereby highlighting the advanced understanding of holistic wellness. However, it is noteworthy that not every inscription recounts instances of dramatic, miraculous cures. A significant number of them document more nuanced, yet profoundly impactful, transformations that nonetheless fundamentally altered individual existences. Gorgias, a craftsman of pottery, arrived at the sanctuary suffering from hands too rigid and inflexible to effectively manipulate clay. Through the divine guidance imparted during his healing experience, he acquired innovative techniques for shaping ceramic vessels that respectfully acknowledged both his physical constraints and his inherent artistic aptitude. He departed filled with gratitude, not for the complete restoration of his former physical capabilities, but rather for the profound sagacity he had gained to skillfully utilize the hands he now possessed, embracing his altered reality with renewed purpose and ingenuity. Furthermore, these inscribed records retain compelling evidence of the sanctuary's remarkably sophisticated comprehension of what contemporary science terms the placebo effect. The intrinsic therapeutic potency of anticipation and optimism when nurtured by authentic compassion and dedicated focus. Sostrata, a woman from Pherae afflicted by parasitic infestation, underwent incubation within the sacred enclosure and, during her slumber, dreamt that the divine progeny of Asclepius meticulously extracted the noxious organisms from her abdomen. Upon her awakening, she discovered herself to be entirely free of her affliction. This narrative strongly implies the application of adept treatment for parasitic infection, yet it is articulated in a manner that simultaneously venerated both human medical intervention and celestial aid, reflecting the pervasive cultural understanding of healing as a collaborative endeavor between mortals and the divine. One can readily envision these engraved narratives being perused by newly arrived individuals at the sanctuary, desperately ailing persons fervently seeking reassurance that their arduous pilgrimage had not been undertaken in futility. These stelae functioned dually as both historical medical documentation and powerful sources of encouragement, demonstrating conclusively that numerous others, afflicted by comparable conditions, had indeed discovered solace and recovery within these hallowed precincts. This inherent dual function transformed them into therapeutic instruments in their own right, instilling a profound sense of hope that empowered patients to engage more comprehensively and actively in their personal journeys toward wellness, fostering a sense of community and shared purpose among the afflicted. These more understated accounts, perhaps, unveil a deeper understanding of the authentic essence of Asclepian healing than do the more dramatic, miraculous cures that so readily captivated the ancient public imagination. The therapeutic philosophy espoused by the sanctuary acknowledged that genuine healing did not invariably equate to a complete restoration to a former, unimpaired state of health, but rather involved discovering viable strategies to live a fulfilling life despite any enduring physical or mental constraints. This compassionate philosophical stance extended profound hope to patients whose chronic or intractable conditions precluded a complete cure, yet whose ailments could nonetheless be managed with profound dignity and renewed existential purpose, emphasizing adaptation and resilience over absolute eradication of illness. Certain inscriptions underscore the sanctuary's proactive readiness to undertake therapeutic interventions for maladies that other medical practitioners had deemed utterly irremediable. Aulus arrived, bereft of sight and solitary, guided solely by his loyal canine companion. The deity purportedly reinstated his vision, and he subsequently departed filled with exultation, no longer requiring the assistance of his devoted animal guide. The remarkably straightforward, unembellished tone of the account implies that the treatment of blindness, though undeniably a formidable challenge, was not regarded as an insurmountable impossibility within the healing traditions of Epidaurus, showcasing an ambitious and hopeful approach to even the most daunting conditions. The remarkable heterogeneity of maladies meticulously catalogued within the inscribed tablets vividly illustrates the expansive and comprehensive scope of Asclepian medical practice. Fractured skeletal structures, suppurating lesions, persistent algia, psychological afflictions, reproductive difficulties, and enigmatic illnesses that eluded precise categorization all received therapeutic attention within these sacred sanctuaries. This breadth suggests a medical paradigm that considered every manifestation of human suffering as inherently deserving of meticulous attention and amenable to potential recovery, irrespective of its nature or origin, reflecting a profound commitment to universal well-being. Pandora, a woman from Thessaly, presented her daughter, who had remained entirely mute since her early childhood. Following a period of 3 nocturnal vigils within the sanctuary, the child unexpectedly vocalized during her slumber, and from that auspicious day onward, she exhibited normal speech patterns. Such instances strongly suggest the sanctuary's remarkably sophisticated grasp of psychological trauma and its various corporeal manifestations, employing therapeutic techniques that would not seem incongruous within the context of contemporary psychotherapy, demonstrating an early appreciation for the mind-body connection in healing speech impediments. Archaeological findings consistently indicate that numerous patients protracted their stays within the sanctuaries for considerable durations, thereby fostering ephemeral communities of individuals intrinsically united by their collective quest for therapeutic restoration. The inscribed tablets occasionally allude to these communal bonds and interpersonal connections. Anaxo, hailing from Aetolia, expresses her profound gratitude not solely to the deity, but also to her fellow supplicants, whose shared companionship rendered the protracted journey toward wellness considerably more endurable. The intrinsic therapeutic benefit derived from sharing experiences with others confronting analogous challenges thus introduced an additional, crucial dimension to the overarching process of recovery, underscoring the importance of social support in ancient healing practices. Furthermore, these epigraphs illuminate the remarkably egalitarian character inherent in Asclepian therapeutic practices. Individuals of all social strata, the affluent and the indigent, the enslaved and the emancipated, foreign visitors and native citizens, all contributed their appreciative testimonies. Nicareba, a bondswoman from Messene, experienced a dream in which the divine entity purportedly excised a morbid growth from her neck. Her mistress, witnessing the miraculous recovery, granted her emancipation and subsequently commissioned the dedication of this commemorative tablet. Such profound healing thus transcended conventional social stratifications in a manner that very few other ancient institutions were able to replicate or accomplish, highlighting the sanctuary's unique role as a leveler of societal distinctions. Yet, arguably, the most profoundly affecting of these inscriptions are those that chronicle not merely corporeal restoration, but also deep-seated spiritual metamorphosis. Antiphanes arrived consumed by profound despair, having endured the tragic loss of his entire family to a devastating plague and his agricultural lands to a prolonged drought. Within the sanctuary, he discovered not the complete restitution of his past losses, but rather the intrinsic fortitude to construct a new existence from the remnants of his former life. These poignant testimonies strongly suggest that the sanctuaries effectively functioned as early forms of counseling centers, providing a sacred space where individuals could meticulously process profound grief and psychological trauma in ways that ultimately empowered them to persist in living with renewed meaning and direction, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of mental health and resilience. Certain inscribed tablets document cases where the comprehensive healing process necessitated a series of successive visits extending over the course of several years. Arestion, a native of Halai, made his third return to the sanctuary, with each subsequent visit imparting a more profound comprehension of his ailment and an enhanced proficiency in its management. He consequently dedicated this tablet, not in celebration of a fully realized cure, but rather in acknowledgement of a therapeutic journey auspiciously commenced and diligently pursued. These particular epigraphs thus reveal a pragmatic and realistic expectation regarding healing as an enduring, incremental process, rather than merely a singular, dramatic intervention, highlighting a long-term commitment to patient well-being. The vernacular employed within these inscriptions frequently mirrors the authentic expressions of the patients themselves, rather than adhering to formal, ritualistic religious terminology. I arrived here on the precipice of death and depart prepared to embrace life anew, declared one appreciative supplicant, encapsulating their profound transformation. The inherent simplicity and unvarnished directness of such declarations convey a far greater sense of conviction and authenticity than any intricate theological exegesis could possibly offer. These individuals are not articulating abstruse doctrinal principles, but rather tangible, palpable alterations within the fabric of their everyday existence, making their accounts profoundly relatable and impactful. Contemporary academicians, engaged in the meticulous study of the extant inscriptions, have successfully discerned recurring patterns indicative of standardized therapeutic methodologies applied to diverse categories of ailments. Specifically, one observes the prominence of dream incubation as a modality for psychological afflictions, surgical procedures for corporeal traumas, prescribed dietary and lifestyle modifications for persistent chronic conditions, and spiritual guidance for profound existential dilemmas. Consequently, these tablets unequivocally demonstrate a medical system sufficiently sophisticated to precisely tailor treatments to individual patient requirements, rather than indiscriminately applying generic, one-size-fits-all solutions, showcasing an advanced diagnostic and therapeutic discernment. An offering of individualized care rather than generic, uniform remedies. Euphrates, a seasoned soldier, initially perceived his combat injuries as indelible emblems of personal disgrace and cowardice. Within these hallowed grounds, however, he discovered a profound truth. His wounds were, in fact, undeniable testaments to his bravery. His journey toward recovery commenced not with the regeneration of physical tissue, but with a profound and transformative shift in understanding. Such poignant records illuminate the sanctuary's sophisticated methodology for addressing trauma, a methodology that remarkably predates contemporary insights into how the process of meaning-making profoundly influences recovery from both corporeal and emotional afflictions. Perhaps the most astonishing revelations preserved in these ancient epigraphs pertain to instances where patients received therapeutic interventions not for their own maladies, but on behalf of cherished family members who were unable to undertake the arduous journey to the sanctuary. Xenophon, for example, recounted a vivid dream wherein he sought a cure for his son's debilitating lameness. Upon awakening and returning to his home, he diligently applied the divine wisdom imparted to him by the god. The outcome was nothing short of miraculous. His son, once hobbled, now ambulates with perfect normalcy. These remarkable narratives intimate a highly advanced comprehension of how restorative knowledge could be effectively transmitted and judiciously applied far beyond the physical confines of the sacred healing precinct. Furthermore, the inscribed tablets serve as invaluable repositories, preserving compelling evidence of the sanctuary's pivotal role as an educational institution. Numerous grateful beneficiaries of healing meticulously documented not only their personal recoveries, but also the invaluable knowledge they acquired, which subsequently empowered them to assist their kin and neighbors. Katie, a skilled midwife, assimilated innovative techniques for managing arduous childbirths within these very walls, methods that have since been credited with safeguarding the lives of countless mothers and infants in her community. These sanctuaries functioned as de facto medical academies, where pragmatic wisdom was generously disseminated among those who possessed the capacity and inclination to employ it for the betterment of others. As the relentless forces of nature, weather, and the inexorable passage of time have progressively eroded the vast majority of these venerable lithic testimonies, we are left with tantalizing fragments that merely hint at untold thousands of deeply personal sagas, narratives of profound suffering transmuted into nascent hope, of inherent limitations transcended through the embrace of acceptance, and of lives meticulously reconstituted through the judicious confluence of human sagacity and divine benevolence. These precious inscriptions serve as a poignant memento, reminding us that concealed behind every monumental medical breakthrough lie innumerable individual chronicles of human beings who possess the audacious courage to believe that their anguish held significance, and that their eventual restoration was, indeed, within the realm of possibility. As the tranquil shroud of night descends and you seek repose in the hushed stillness, one might conceivably conjure these ancient voices, reverberating across the vast expanse of centuries. Not merely the sensational and dramatic cures that invariably captured widespread attention, but equally the more subtle, incremental triumphs that rendered the fabric of ordinary existence tolerable once more. Perhaps the most profound and enduring healing chronicled within these venerable tablets is the very restoration of hope itself. The luminous revelation that even amidst the most profound and debilitating illness, the transformative potential for betterment steadfastly endures. Our introspective journey through the multifaceted life and enduring legacy of Asclepius culminates at that enigmatic juncture when the mortal healer transcends his earthly corporeal existence and assumes his rightful station amidst the celestial pantheon of gods. Yet this profound metamorphosis is not precipitated by conquest or ostentatious displays of power. Rather, it emerges organically and inevitably from a life meticulously dedicated to assuaging suffering, one patient at a time, until the traditionally distinct demarcation between the human and the divine gradually dissolves in the gentle, yet unwavering persistence of compassionate service. One can readily envision the venerable Asclepius in his twilight years as a mortal man, his once dark hair now a luminous white, reminiscent of polished temple marble. His hands, though bearing the indelible marks of countless acts of healing, remain remarkably steady as they tenderly caress a patient's fevered brow. He moves with a more measured gait now, yet his touch retains the same exquisite gentleness it possessed in his youth, when the wise centaur Chiron first instructed him in the art of binding wounds within the serene confines of the forest sanctuary. By this epoch, the sacred edifices consecrated in his honor had proliferated across the expansive Hellenic world. Nevertheless, Asclepius consistently demonstrated a marked preference for the intimate, individualistic labor of healing over the more formal and ceremonial aspects of divine veneration. The formidable reputation that had steadily accrued around him over decades of unwavering service engendered both unprecedented opportunities and concomitant challenges. Monarchs from distant lands sought his sagacious counsel regarding virulent plagues that imperiled their kingdoms. Affluent families proffered immense fortunes in exchange for his personal attention to their various ailments. Esteemed fellow physicians embarked on arduous pilgrimages, traversing vast distances to assimilate his innovative techniques and comprehend his intricate methodologies. Despite this burgeoning renown, Asclepius invariably felt most at ease in unadorned chambers, where ordinary individuals grappled with profound pain and overwhelming fear, requiring not merely sophisticated medical intervention, but also the profound reassurance that their suffering was acknowledged and genuinely cared for. However, such unparalleled success in the realm of healing invariably brought forth its own intricate set of complications. As Asclepius's extraordinary abilities began to surpass anything that purely mortal medicine could conceivably achieve, he commenced attracting the unwelcome scrutiny of entities who regarded his remarkable work with suspicion rather than heartfelt gratitude. The other Olympian deities, ensconced securely within their traditional domains of power, grew progressively discomfited by a healer whose profound influence disseminated not through intimidation or compelled worship, but through the authentic and selfless provision of genuine service. The pivotal moment of crisis arrived when Asclepius began to transcend the mere healing of the afflicted, venturing into the forbidden territory of resurrecting the deceased, thereby breaching boundaries that even divine healers were expressly forbidden to transgress. The initial instance involved a young mother who tragically succumbed during childbirth, despite his most fervent endeavors to preserve her life. While her infant remarkably survived, the profound anguish of the grieving husband impelled Asclepius to attempt an act he had never before contemplated. Drawing upon the formidable divine power inherited from his illustrious father, Apollo, he summoned the woman's ethereal spirit back from the abyssal depths of the underworld, restoring her to corporeal life. The resurrection proved successful, and for a fleeting moment, the overwhelming joy of a reunited family appeared to entirely vindicate this unprecedented intervention. Nevertheless, such dramatic contraventions of the inherent natural order could not possibly remain clandestine. Word of the miraculous feat rapidly disseminated throughout the entire region. Soon, desperate relatives from across the breadth of Greece converged upon Asclepius, bearing the lifeless forms of their beloved kin and imploring him to enact similar resurrections. Each individual case presented an agonizing ethical dilemma. How could a healer, who had dedicated his entire existence to the preservation of life, conceivably refuse to restore it when he unequivocally possessed the extraordinary power to do so? Yet, Asclepius gradually began to apprehend that his repeated acts of resurrection fundamentally jeopardized the intricate foundational order that sustained the very equilibrium of the world. If the ultimate finality of death were to become entirely reversible, what then would become of the immutable natural cycles that govern all existence? What would be the fate of the hard-won wisdom that invariably emerges from the stoic acceptance of one's own mortality? Hades, the formidable deity of the underworld, observed with escalating apprehension as the steady influx of souls into his shadowy dominion dwindled to a mere trickle. The meticulously maintained equilibrium between life and death, an equilibrium utterly indispensable to the cosmos itself, began to visibly waver under the immense pressure of Asclepius's profoundly compassionate yet ultimately disruptive interventions. Other Olympian deities discovered their own respective domains profoundly impacted as mortals who, by all accounts, should have perished, continued to live, thereby altering the established patterns of worship, warfare, and natural succession that had meticulously structured divine authority for countless millennia. Even Zeus himself grew increasingly disquieted, not out of petty jealousy regarding Asclepius's formidable power, but rather from a profound understanding that certain inviolable boundaries exist not to arbitrarily restrict compassion, but rather to diligently preserve the grander cosmic harmony within which compassion can genuinely and effectively operate. The sovereign king of the gods faced a momentous decision, one that would irrevocably define the intrinsic relationship between divine omnipotence and moral accountability. Should he permit an unfettered and boundless healing that threatened the very fabric of cosmic order? Or should he decisively intercede and halt a healer whose sole transgression was an overwhelming and boundless empathy for human suffering? The ultimate confrontation arrived, not heralded by cataclysmic thunder and seismic tremors, but rather by a singular, precisely aimed thunderbolt that struck Asclepius instantaneously as he diligently labored over another patient who had already tragically succumbed. The divine execution transpired with terrifying swiftness, entirely devoid of warning or any opportunity for final utterances. In one fleeting moment, the dedicated healer was intensely focused over his patient. In the very next, both lay motionless beneath the crushing weight of Zeus's inexorable judgment. Yet, far from terminating his extraordinary narrative, this divine execution paradoxically became Asclepius's ultimate transformation. Apollo, his divine father, mourned the demise of his beloved son with such profound and inconsolable grief that his sorrow threatened to plunge the entire world into an abyss of eternal darkness. The sun god's overwhelming anguish swayed even Zeus to reconsider his initially severe judgment, ultimately leading to a judicious compromise that simultaneously honored both divine justice and profound compassion. Zeus, in an act of celestial grace, placed Asclepius among the resplendent stars as the constellation of Ophiuchus, the serpent-bearer, thereby ensuring that his benevolent influence would endure for all eternity. More significantly, the healer's indomitable spirit ascended to take its rightful place within the esteemed pantheon of gods, not as a conquering warlord or an autocratic ruler, but as something far rarer and more profound. A divine entity whose intrinsic power emanated entirely from a boundless wellspring of compassion. Unlike other deities who imperiously demanded sacrifice and absolute submission, Asclepius graciously offered healing that requested absolutely nothing in return, save for the sincere commitment to utilize recovered health with sagacity and purpose. His burgeoning temples consequently became sacred sanctuaries where suffering was consistently met with profound understanding rather than harsh judgment. The authentic miracle inherent in Asclepius's deification resides not merely in the fact that a mortal being ultimately ascended to godhood, but rather that he became a deity who profoundly remembered and empathized with what it truly felt like to experience the frailties of mortal existence. His divine healing intrinsically retained the gentle, unwavering patience meticulously cultivated during his human years. The practical, insightful wisdom acquired from Chiron's sagacious tutelage, and the profound humility that invariably arises from diligently working within inherent limitations, rather than merely attempting to overwhelm them with brute power. The revered temples consecrated to the divine Asclepius continue to operate in strict accordance with the fundamental principles meticulously established during his mortal practice. Healing within these hallowed precincts invariably transpires through the harmonious amalgamation of pragmatic medicine, empathetic psychological support, and profound spiritual transformation. Patients, therefore, discover not merely physical alleviation, but also the profound restoration of hope and a renewed sense of purpose. The iconic staff entwined with a serpent thus became enduring symbols that honor both the immense power and the essential restraint indispensably requisite for the attainment of genuine and holistic healing. The initial profound lesson conveyed is the critical importance of restraint for genuine restoration. Perhaps most remarkably, Asclepius's apotheosis, his elevation to divine status, paradoxically did not sever his ties to the tribulations of humankind. Instead, this celestial metamorphosis profoundly intensified his bond with human suffering. In his new capacity as a deity, Asclepius possessed the extraordinary ability to manifest his presence concurrently across all his numerous sacred sanctuaries, extending solace and aid. He would bestow therapeutic visions and healing dreams upon innumerable supplicants, offering cryptic yet invaluable insights that often guided mortal physicians towards an accurate diagnosis and appropriate course of treatment. Furthermore, his divine influence was believed to impart a profound spiritual fortitude, empowering individuals to bear the burden of chronic afflictions or those conditions for which no complete medical cure was yet attainable, fostering resilience in the face of persistent adversity. The benevolent sway of this healing deity radiated extensively, traversing far beyond the consecrated confines of his dedicated temple complexes. It is observed that any medical practitioner who meticulously blends profound technical expertise with an authentic, heartfelt compassion for their patients effectively perpetuates Asclepius's enduring legacy. Similarly, every dedicated healer who adopts a holistic perspective, diligently attending to the entire individual, their psychological, emotional, and social dimensions, rather than narrowly focusing solely on isolated physical symptoms, implicitly upholds his pioneering therapeutic methodology. Moreover, each significant stride in medical innovation that deliberately places the comprehensive well-being and welfare of the patient above fleeting professional renown or institutional glory unmistakably mirrors the fundamental ethical principles and profound values Asclepius himself championed. However, arguably Asclepius's most profound and enduring contribution to humankind lies in his compelling demonstration that immense divine power and an unwavering moral responsibility are not antithetical forces, but rather synergistic partners in the pursuit of well-being. His remarkable readiness to acknowledge and accept inherent limitations on his extraordinary abilities, even to the ultimate extent of facing and embracing death, serves as a powerful testament. This illustrates unequivocally that authentic healing necessitates a profound wisdom, the discernment to know precisely when to actively intervene with curative measures and, crucially, when to gracefully accept circumstances that lie beyond the scope of alteration. Such a nuanced comprehension, far from diminishing his potency, actually amplifies his influence, rendering his power more profoundly effective. This is because his interventions align harmoniously with, rather than contend against, the immutable rhythms and principles of the natural order. The iconic serpent, gracefully entwined around his sacred staff, emerges as an impeccable emblem for this meticulously balanced philosophy concerning the exercise of healing power. Serpentine creatures are inherently perilous, possessing the capacity to inflict death through their potent venom. Yet this very same toxic substance, when meticulously purified, carefully formulated, and judiciously administered, possesses the remarkable property of functioning as a potent therapeutic agent. This profound symbol serves as a constant admonition that the art of healing invariably entails an intricate engagement with potent forces, elements that possess the dual capacity to inflict profound harm as readily as they can bestow profound benefit. Consequently, practitioners are obligated to wield both exhaustive scientific knowledge and sagacious practical wisdom to ensure their safe and efficacious application. As the annals of history unfolded over successive centuries, the veneration and cult of Asclepius disseminated widely, permeating the entire expanse of the Mediterranean world and extending significantly beyond its geographical confines. Powerful Roman emperors, seeking divine guidance and remedies, were known to consult his revered oracles, while nascent Christian communities, recognizing the efficacy of his approach, selectively integrated and adapted certain aspects of his healing practices into their own nascent traditions. Later, eminent Islamic physicians meticulously studied and incorporated elements of his therapeutic methods into their sophisticated medical treatises. His enduring influence thus remarkably surpassed conventional religious and distinct cultural demarcations, primarily because it directly addressed the fundamental and universal human predicament of suffering, alongside the equally pervasive and inherent human aspiration for solace and alleviation. Contemporary medical science, despite its rapid technological advancements, demonstrably preserves distinct and evident vestiges of Asclepian influence. These are discernible in various manifestations, ranging from the well-known caduceus symbol, frequently adopted and displayed by numerous medical organizations, to the profound understanding that effective healing encompasses not merely biological or purely physical interventions, but crucially involves intricate psychological and significant social factors impacting an individual's well-being. The comprehensive, holistic approach to patient care, initially championed and meticulously pioneered within his sacred sanctuaries, has continuously evolved and persists in contemporary clinical practices. These practices are designed to treat patients as integrated, multifaceted individuals, whole persons with complex needs, rather than simply as disparate assemblages of isolated symptoms. Nevertheless, arguably the most profound and lasting facet of Asclepius's historical legacy resides in the fundamental, yet often overlooked recognition that the act of healing constitutes a profoundly sacred endeavor. This sacrosanct quality does not stem from a reliance on miraculous or supernatural intervention, but rather from its status as the paramount application of human ingenuity and specialized skill, meticulously employed in dedicated service to the comprehensive welfare of humanity. Indeed, every authentic instance of restorative care, ranging from intricate surgical procedures that preserve precious lives to the simple, empathetic utterance of kind words that provide solace to those nearing the end of their mortal journey, inherently partakes in and reflects the divine compassion and profound empathy that Asclepius personified and embodied throughout his mythical existence. As one contemplates the passage of time and the enduring impact of ancient figures, it becomes apparent that Asclepius inaugurated a quiet yet profound revolution. In a historical epoch dominated by deities who frequently exacted arduous sacrifices and demanded absolute submission from their mortal adherents, he presented an entirely distinct paradigm, a form of healing that simultaneously venerated human dignity and judiciously applied divine wisdom. His indelible legacy endures not merely within the hallowed halls of hospitals and the rigorous curricula of medical schools, but rather permeates every single instance where an individual consciously opts for profound compassion in lieu of detached indifference, where adept, skilled hands diligently labor to alleviate suffering, and where an unwavering spirit of hope stubbornly persists even when confronted with seemingly insurmountable odds. The extraordinary narrative of the mortal who ascended to become a revered god of healing imparts a fundamental lesson. that true divinity is not characterized by the exertion of power or dominance over others, but rather by an unwavering, patient dedication to assiduously improving the quality of existence for all those within one's sphere of influence. His compelling story serves as a potent reminder to humanity that the most profound and impactful transformations frequently materialize not through grand, dramatic gestures or ostentatious displays, but through a continuous succession of persistent acts of selfless service, meticulously performed with profound gentleness and thoughtfully guided by an insightful wisdom that respectfully acknowledges both the possibilities of alteration and the realities that necessitate acceptance. One can therefore conclude with the comforting assurance that Asclepius's pervasive, gentle influence persistently courses through the fabric of our contemporary world, akin to an unseen underground spring. This benevolent current continually surfaces and becomes manifest wherever genuine healing transpires and wherever the potent force of love triumphs over the debilitating grip of fear. In the precise and careful diagnosis rendered by every dedicated physician, in the empathetic and gentle touch extended by every compassionate nurse, and indeed, in every precious moment when human suffering is encountered with profound understanding rather than harsh judgment, the revered God of healing perpetually sustains his sacred endeavor of meticulously transforming affliction and pain into renewed hope, attending to the well-being of each individual patient one at a time. The principle of addressing each individual instance with singular focus, encapsulated by the phrase, "one patient at a time," represents a foundational tenet in the provision of highly personalized services, especially within the intricate landscape of healthcare. It articulates a profound commitment to undivided attention, ensuring that every person receives bespoke care and consideration, moving beyond the impersonal treatment of a collective or a mere statistical unit. This methodology transcends a simple quest for efficiency. It stands as a veritable cornerstone of superior quality assurance and unwavering patient safety. When medical professionals dedicate their complete cognitive and practical resources to a solitary case, the potential for oversight or misjudgment significantly diminishes. Such focused engagement permits a thorough and nuanced assessment of distinct symptoms, a comprehensive scrutiny of an individual's medical history, and the precise execution of therapeutic protocols, all indispensable elements for achieving optimal health outcomes. The inherent complexities of human physiology and pathology unequivocally demand this level of concentrated involvement, as generalized approaches frequently prove inadequate in addressing specific, unique needs. Furthermore, this philosophical approach profoundly influences the patient's holistic experience. The act of receiving personal, unhurried attention cultivates a vital sense of trust and affirmation, which can possess therapeutic benefits as potent as any direct medical intervention. It acknowledges the patient's inherent humanity, their anxieties, and their singular life narrative, thereby transforming what could otherwise be an impersonal clinical encounter into a genuinely compassionate and empathetic interaction. This human-centric perspective is crucial for establishing strong rapport and fostering transparent communication, both of which are indispensable for the effective and humane delivery of care. Ultimately, the steadfast adherence to diligently attending to one patient at a time embodies an enduring professional ethos. It champions a lofty standard of care, where individual well-being is held paramount. where every person is accorded the inherent dignity of focused attention, and where the intricate nuances of each case are meticulously scrutinized. This guiding principle continues to illuminate the path for all those dedicated to delivering truly individualized, impactful, and profoundly respectful service.